It's talking season. It's also excuse making season. Baking in those early excuses that when things go awry, when your season gets waylaid, you already have a built in excuse. Don't worry. We expected this. We all knew it was going to happen. Welcome into Wire to Wire. My name is Diesel. Sitting beside me now in the stream yard. He's on this side, actually. I got to point to the left when you're actually sitting to my right. It's kind of screwy here. But Carlos with a K joining me once again from New York City. Thanks for being a part of the show again today, pal.
Oh, did I really have a choice? I feel like if I didn't do it, you guys would have kidnapped my dog or something like that.
Well,
no, I'm kidding.
You.
I'm yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I'm doing this for money. I forgot. We get paid for this in this economy. No, listen, it's a blast to be here. I'm always honored to sit into the chair. Shout out to Cole for not being here and doing his job. Someone's got to pick up the slack around here.
He's in South America. Meanwhile, we got a South American in America doing the show. How about that? You're taking his job, man.
Careful, that's a slippery slope. Yeah, some people here, they're coming and taking our jobs. I am Puerto Rican, by the way. That's an American citizen. USA.
So South Carolina, for years, Carlos has been able to complain / take pride in the fact that they knew in advance their season was not going to go well because they had consistently one of the toughest schedules in college football. I don't know how that really worked because you were in the SEC East when the SEC East was kind of down. Sure, Georgia made that climb to where they are during that stretch when South Carolina was consistently getting one of the toughest schedules. But everybody knows the toughest division in college football was the SEC West. So how that mathed, I'm not entirely sure, Carlos, but South Carolina fans don't get to use that excuse anymore. Certainly, they got it tough. If you're playing in the SEC, you're always going to have it tough, but you don't get to wave that flag. It's like we're not really waving the flags for scoring a lot of touchdowns. We're waving the flag that says, hey, guys, we're the sacrificial lambs in the conference. We're taking it on the chin for everybody. We're playing the toughest schedule in college football. That's not the case in 2024. South Carolina finds themselves number 15, I think, the last time I checked, number 15 toughest schedule in America. And I want to take a look at the schedules that our good friend Phil Steele, one of the all-time GOATs when it comes to putting together his preview magazine, the programs that he has listed in the top 10 of college football's toughest schedules in 2024, and really parse the question, Carlos, who pissed off somebody at the scheduling office? Who got screwed over the most? 71307. You want to be a part of the show? Just start your text with keyword fan. That's how you can text in. The stream is up. It is alive. Carlos, you can actually even see the comments as they're coming through. We'll be checking your comments throughout the show today here on the stream on Facebook and on Twitter. Not Twitter. Elon, you got me again. I said this thing was going to be live on Twitter. It's not live on Twitter. I don't have $8 a month to pay you, okay? But we are streaming on YouTube. So on Facebook and on YouTube, just search for The Fan Upstate. So, Carlos, do you know who's listed currently as the hardest schedule in college football?
Oh, I don't know who's listed according to anybody's graphs, but if you look at the Carlos with a K graph, I got Florida as the ones that they've really pissing people off. Shout out to my guy Alex Marvez, by the way. Florida's got a brutal schedule. They're the only team in college football that's got to face 11 power conference teams. So they got their work cut out from in the worst way. And Billy Napier's already been a little bit on the warm seat, dare I say hot seat, after losing consecutive seasons. So, Diesel, check this out. They have 5 consecutive games in November against top 25 opponents. They got Georgia, they got Florida State, they got Texas, and they have a game against LSU. This is a brutal stretch to an already brutal campaign for the Gators this season. So it's number 1 Florida for me by far.
Deservedly so. The front half of their schedule, not like that brutal, but the back half of the schedule, you're right, is where it gets really, really tough. Now, I don't know exactly when Florida scheduled UCF. At the time, I'm sure they were an in-state G5 program. They thought, hey, this is going to be easy. We're going to have some massive revenue advantage over them. We're just going to run roughshod over the Knights from Orlando. But now, of course, they're playing in the Big 12. They've got some money. Certainly, they probably haven't had enough time to really get this program to where they want it to be. It takes a solid decade. I mean, it's one thing to get money all of a sudden, right? Now, not that either one of us know what that feels like, to just money thrown at us in the way that a Big 12 program does. But you got to figure out how to use that money wisely, right? At this level, sure, it's a lot more money than you've ever had, but you got to learn how to use it at that level. So you got to ramp up your recruiting efforts. You got to ramp up your facilities. All of these things all require that budget. So it's going to take them quite a while to get to a true, legitimate, almost like think of a homeostasis level of Power 5 spending, to the point where, like, okay, now we're not doing all these mega projects. Now we're just maintaining what we've got, right? They're still in the building mode of having Power 5 money, but UCF is not a program that Florida expected to be a power program at the time. Certainly with the transfer portal, it makes it a lot easier to say, I don't even know who the UCF head coach is right now, but to say, hey, guys, come transfer to us. We're a power program now, right? Like all these guys who fancy themselves power athletes, they're now saying, hey, we got a whole bunch of roster spots available for you in a Power 5 conference. So come on down here to Orlando, and guess what? You get to maybe help us kick Florida's ass in one of our early campaigns as a power program. So yeah, Florida's got it tough. Now, part of this, again, is of their own doing. Miami, they didn't have to schedule Miami, but they did. Samford, going to be an easy one. Not Stanford, Samford out of the Southern Conference. A&M going to be rough at Mississippi State, UCF at home, at Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia off a bye, but both of them are off of a bye. And it's going to be at a neutral site, so you don't really get that home field advantage. You get a little bit more of it because you're in the state of Florida, but you don't get a true home field advantage for either one of these teams. Then they go on the road at Texas, off a bye, LSU. They face Ole Miss at home, off a bye, and then at Florida State. Somebody said something about somebody's mama down at the scheduling office, and they got their asses absolutely kicked. If you're a Florida fan, like, this has been rated as the hardest schedule in college football history. And you got to do it with a coach that's embattled. And you got to do it when your bitter rival right up the road in Athens, Georgia, has all the power. Like, that's why it's so tough. And I do feel for South Carolina fans when they say, well, you can't just come up in the SEC. That might have been true 5-6 years ago before the transfer portal and NIL. If you got the money, you can come up quick, right, in college football today. But it's tough when you've got the best of the best in the conference right there, who's taking your recruits and who's kicking your ass on the field.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much for me to piggyback off of that. You really ripped the meat off of the bone there. So I kind of do want to push back a little bit on something you mentioned earlier about the, Gamecocks fans' ability to whine, and rightfully so, how hard their schedule is. Oh, woe is me, that black cloud that followed me around. Their schedule is still pretty damn hard this year.
Yeah. It's not easy.
It's still tough. I mean, you get to avoid playing Georgia, Tennessee, Florida for the first time. It feels like in 10 years that you don't have any of them on the schedule. But you got to host LSU and Ole Miss. You got to go to Alabama, Oklahoma, of course, the Palmetto Bowl. Those are 5 games that's likely going to be inside of the top 15s in terms of matchup. The week 2 matchup against Kentucky already is going to be a pivotal match, because we talked about it yesterday. Like, you can hope that you're 2-2 after your first 4 games, but it's more than likely is if you lose to Old Dominion, you got to hit the panic button right away, because 1-3 could be reasonable to expect. 2-2 would be fantastic, I think, with the first quarter of the schedule. So yes, it's not as tough as it can be and has been in the past years. But I still think the Gamecocks schedule is pretty tough this season.
Yeah, it's that old classic saying, out of the frying pan into the fire. And if you were an SEC East team, you're thinking to yourselves, man, we were in the easier division in a really, really tough conference. Yeah, maybe we get to miss Georgia this year, but oh, guess what? Now you got to go on the road to Alabama, on the road to Oklahoma. You got Texas A&M. So by playing fewer easy East Division opponents, now you got to play more of the really hard West Division opponents. So you put yourself in a really tough spot. Conversely, if you are a fan of a team coming out of the Western side of the conference and you guys have been complaining, now this is first world problems, right? Complaining for years that we're playing in the toughest division in this sport. It'd be nice to take a week off every now and again, like you can in the East of the SEC. Well, you may get just a little bit of a break, but unfortunately, you also might get Georgia on your schedule. So it's certainly a trade-off to go that way. Looking at the top 10 toughest schedules in college football, some of these, I'm just wondering where they're getting this rating of top 10. And some of them have, and there's one I'm going to bring up in just a minute, Stanford, listed as number 10 in the rankings. But Carlos, I'm going to give you some info on who they face when they face them. That's going to say, again, who did they piss off at the scheduling office? So actually, let's go straight to Stanford, listed as number 10, the 10th toughest schedule in college football. TCU to start the season. They made the college football playoff a couple of years ago. I understand some things have changed down there at TCU. They're not that far from a
national championship appearance.
Right. Garrett Riley is now at Clemson. He's not there anymore. Cal Poly in game 2. It's okay. Everybody gets an FCS opponent. But get this. They go on the road at Syracuse, who's coming off of a bye. Then they go on the road to Clemson, face Virginia Tech, at Notre Dame, coming off a bye, SMU, coming off a bye, Wake Forest, at NC State, coming off a bye, Louisville, coming off a bye, at Cal, and at San Jose State. Like, everyone is going to have 2 weeks to prepare for Stanford. How does this even happen? If I'm somebody inside the Stanford department, I am yelling at the NCAA. I am yelling at ACC scheduling committee. What are you trying to do to us? Are you trying to get us all killed? The hell is wrong with you?
Yeah, it's a hell of a selling point if you're looking for a new home in Stanford or anybody's trying to leave the conference, because you're like, yeah, we can play football and then get absolutely trounced by one of the toughest schedules. That's literally just punishment. It's punishment for all the realignment talk that's happened across the landscape. It just feels like Stanford's getting the brunt of it. But I don't know who they pissed off, but maybe they got to do like what is that movie, Major League, where you had the guy who praying to Jobu in his booth there. Like, maybe you
trying to tell me Jesus Christ can't hit a curveball?
You know what, Jobu, I'll do it myself. Maybe they need to start praying to I don't know, pick 5 religions and get random gods out of there, because that schedule is not going to let up for them. And hey, there's always baseball season. Am I right?
UCLA and USC listed as number 2 and 3 toughest schedules in college football. Certainly making their way into the Big Ten. That's going to be a huge culture shock for USC and UCLA, especially because UCLA's coach, he's just excited to be here. You know, he didn't have a speech prepared. He didn't know what to say about his program. I think it's going to be a really tough year for UCLA. They might be lucky to win 3 games this year on the road at Hawaii. It's a nice little trip to start the season, right? Nice little pre-vacation to start the season. Indiana at LSU, Oregon off a bye, at Penn State, Minnesota at Rutgers. That's an easy one. At Nebraska, probably still an easy one, but I think Matt Rule is going to get that program turned around. Iowa at Washington, Southern Cal, and then Fresno State to close out the season. There's going to be a stretch in the middle of that season where the UCLA Bruins are going to go a long time without winning a game. USC, they get to start on a neutral site playing in Vegas against LSU, Utah State at Michigan, Wisconsin off a bye, at Minnesota, Penn State, at Maryland, Rutgers at Washington, Nebraska off a bye, at UCLA, and Notre Dame to end the season. Lincoln Riley could very well find himself on the hot seat by the end of this season. We know how his 2023 campaign ended. Somehow that didn't really affect Caleb Williams' draft stock. Make that one make a little sense to me. How do you lose 5 straight games to end a season after you started so hot? And nobody in the NFL, not a single scout is like, it's going to give me a little bit of pause here.
Yeah, but you know what? If USC is able to beat LSU to open the season, then maybe they can launch that into some bigger, better things during their inaugural season in the Big Ten. Hey, you want it to be in the Big Ten? Nothing says Big Ten more like USC playing Rutgers. Jersey and California making a lot of sense in conference play. It's a tough schedule. What can I say? But I don't feel bad for them. I just wonder if they can find any way to put up some front of a defense. They haven't had a defense for as long as I can remember. I'm very sure that we can get 9 guys and put up 14 points against them, Diesel.
Here's what I find really fascinating about the UCLA and USC schedules. Neither one of them plays a true road game in November in the Big Ten. I'm talking about the places where you don't want to go in November. I'm talking about the Minnesotas and the Illinois and the places where it's going to be butt crack cold in these places. You don't want to go to these places, right? These are the places you got to cut open a tauntaun and crawl inside for warmth in the wintertime. But somehow they miss those places. I don't understand how both UCLA and USC, the California schools, who did they pay off to not go play in the snow? Because they've done it. Now, October, I get it. It can snow in some of these places in October, but the real cold doesn't start until November. Mm-hmm. And somehow both of those programs missed all of those opponents on the road. I mean, they're getting a little bit of hometown love there, I think.
Yeah, you know who's trying to call them right now to get some scheduling tips? Mike McDaniel from the Miami Dolphins. He's on the phone right now. Hey, how do we get these cold cities out of the way so when playoff time comes up in the pros, we can stay in the warm weather because we keep getting frozen and fished at the end of the year.
We got Zenny on the stream. The first time Zenny has jumped into the live stream here on Wire to Wire. We appreciate you, Zenny Walker. She's a longtime P1 of our sister station, 93.3 The Planet. I've always appreciated her support. She's loving the Furman flag behind me. She said Josiah moves in August, music education, marching band. Awesome. Zenny, congratulations to you and congratulations to Josiah. We appreciate you being a part of the stream today. Also, let's see. Magcraft, he says 9 of the top 10 most difficult schedules are SEC teams. Then if 9 of the top 10 stop being SEC teams, then it stops being an excuse. They're all playing each other. Very interesting take here. SEC fans, stop bitching about your tough schedule. You know all about it, says Magcraft. Hey, appreciate him being a part of the show today as well. Don't forget, coming up in the 5 o'clock hour, we're going to have your chance to win 4 tickets to Carolina Panthers Fan Fest. That's happening August 1st at Clemson, celebrating 30 years of Carolina Panthers football by going back to the place where it all began, the place where they played their inaugural season in Clemson. Just to give you an idea, again, to close out the top 10 toughest schedules before we move on, Florida 1, UCLA 2, USC 3, Georgia Tech 4, Houston 5, Purdue 6, West Virginia 7, Georgia 8, Alabama 9, and then Stanford, who plays every single team with 2 weeks to prepare for them. They're coming in at number 10. Now, Carlos, we live in weird, interesting times, right? Sure. Where things don't make sense, where you can be whatever you want to be. You can identify as a jelly donut if that's what you want to do. Well, guess what? Boneless chicken wings can now contain bones, and it's the law. We'll talk about that next, right here on the Fan Upstates. It's 2024, Carlos. Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria, and now boneless chicken wings can, by law, contain bones. The hell are we doing?
How does that make any sense whatsoever?
I'm going to tell you. I'm going to explain to you how that makes sense. But first, we got a quote. We got a question here from Brian Pettit. Says, when does high school football start? High school football week 0 in the state of South Carolina begins August 23rd. So we are now T-minus, doing the math here in the top of my head, 28 days, 27 days, something like that. August 23rd. Somebody else do the math. Help me out here. It's the what? I'm sorry. Carlos's stream froze. Maybe we'll catch him back here in just a second. Say that one more time.
You got me here?
Yes.
Oh man, you guys missed my rendition of the final countdown. I was over here singing and dancing and having clapping along.
Well, maybe it's a good thing that the StreamYard glitched and we didn't have to hear that.
No, we're gonna do it again. It's the final countdown. All right, that's enough.
So let me explain to you. And of course, this mass hysteria we're talking about here with boneless chicken wings now legally being allowed to have bones is not coming from the South where people have common sense. It's coming from the upper Midwest, from the state of Ohio. Ohio, look at you ruining things. Hell no is more like it. Ruining everything. The Ohio Supreme Court, Carlos, has ruled that boneless chicken wings can, in fact, contain bones. I don't know how you feel about boneless chicken wings, if they count as chicken wings or are they just churched up, fancified chicken nuggets?
Yeah, they're adult nuggets, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. I like boneless wings for what they are. It's just, it's either a nice snack or an appetizer. It's something you don't have to get fancy. There are sometimes I don't feel like dealing with the messes of having bones. You got to pick through them, lick them clean, get a separate plate. Sometimes you just want to dunk and eat and not worry about biting into something that's going to potentially break your teeth. But I don't know how the hell this court ruling. These people went to law school. And they can't figure this out?
Yeah. Okay. So let me explain to you, and then we'll just rip this to shreds, right? Because I think both of us agree that this is completely idiotic, completely stupid, and would not happen in these parts, okay? Ohio's highest court agreed to hear an appeal filed by a guy named Michael Berkheimer, who ordered boneless chicken wings at a restaurant in the city of Hamilton in 2016 and ended up with a piece of bone lodged in his throat that forced him to undergo multiple surgeries. So Michael, poor guy, he ordered some boneless chicken wings. He choked on a bone, so he's sued a lot of people, right? He sued a lot of people. He sued the restaurant. He sued the companies that processed and supplied the chicken to the restaurant, all while arguing something that makes a lot of sense to me and should make a lot of sense to you and to everybody, all the Tolos listening, which means turn it on, leave it on. He argued that anyone who orders boneless chicken wings should not expect to encounter any bones when they're chowing down. Makes a lot of common sense, right?
That's a reasonable expectation. It's like I don't know what's the thing that we can think of. All right, I'm looking at a bottle of Clorox bleach. I expect that if I put a red shirt in there, it's going to turn pink. Right? That's what bleach does. If I'm going to bite into something boneless, I probably don't want to bite into a bone. That's a reasonable expectation.
Right. And I've actually had this happen to me, not exactly in this scenario, but I'll explain that later. I don't want to focus on the wrong part of the story here. So the defendants in these lawsuits argued that bones are quote unquote natural to meat and that there's only so much they can do to make sure boneless chicken wings live up to the label of boneless chicken wings.
It sounds like the stupidest marketing ploy ever. Introducing boneless chicken wings now with extra bone.
Now it does, to be fair, it does say boneless. It doesn't say bone free. It says boneless. So less bone. Yeah, exactly. It's less bones in the wings, not no bones in the wings. I know. I know. I'm playing devil's advocate here, okay, for just a second with you.
Yeah, clearly, because it's the devil's work at play.
Yeah. So it says here that multiple judges agreed with Michael, the guy that sued, but things took a turn when the case headed to the Ohio Supreme Court, and they heard the case. They issued a 4-3 decision where a quartet of justices, I don't know why this is pertinent, but it was part of the article, so I'm going to read it for you. All 4 of the Republican judges ruled that boneless wings can, in fact, have bones.
They were influenced by Big Chicken. Big Chicken get in their pockets. Yeah. Everybody's starting an investigation into their lobbying campaign funds.
They're sleeping on pillows shaped like little dinosaurs.
You just see a CEO of Purdue around the corner with a bag with a $sign printed on it.
This was their ruling, Carlos, and see if you can see if you've got a shovel big enough to dig through all this crap. It says, quote, there is no breach of a duty when the consumer could have reasonably expected and guarded against the presence of the injurious substance in the food. The food item's label on the menu described a cooking style. It was not a guarantee. That's how they argued this.
I hate the argument. I really do. But there's one small thing that I will agree with. And this has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat, which was reflected in the 4-3 vote, apparently, in this Ohio Supreme Court. You really couldn't figure out you were chewing on a bone, that you swallowed a bone? How small was this thing?
It could have been a piece, like all it has to do is be a little piece that's got a sharp edge to it.
I don't know.
Swallow it.
Because I'm pretty cognizant of what I put into my mouth.
Chew your food.
I know how that sounds.
Chew your food.
I know what foreign thing enters my orifice. Like I think I'd be able to detect the bone. I'm a little surprised this guy couldn't.
What you're saying is, you know what it feels like when something goes in your mouth that's not supposed to go in your mouth?
Yes. At the risk of knowing what that makes me sound like.
Don't me too me right here live on my own show. It's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Cole Bryson is out. He is currently in Nicaragua. We've got Carlos with a K live from New York City joining in. So here's the dissenting opinion, and there's some merit in this. The Democrat who penned the dissenting opinion took issue with the court ruling on a matter he asserted should be settled by a jury, while also highlighting a potential flaw in the argument. He said, quote, people can die under some of those circumstances. If you want to say that a label on a food merely describes a cooking style, not a guarantee, people can die under some of those circumstances. And this court would point to the decision in this case and say that lactose and gluten and nuts are natural to foods. Yeah. So you could say, what if you went to a restaurant, and this restaurant uses peanut oil to make their food, but they put on the menu peanut free.
Yep.
Oh, so they could be saying, well, they could argue now. Apparently, they can argue, well, it just describes the fact that the food doesn't have any peanuts in it. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that the food was not prepared in any way, shape, or form using peanuts.
Yeah, this whole thing is going to open up a Pandora's box of like what exactly is in our food, and sometimes that's a question that's better left unanswered. I don't want to know all of the things that I'm eating, just as short of telling me if it's going to kill me or not. As you were reading this, I immediately thought of that scene of Mrs. Doubtfire at the end, where she saved the guy choking on some spice because he was like allergic to cayenne pepper.
Yeah.
I don't know why I immediately thought of that, but not everybody has a Mrs. Doubtfire hanging out in the kitchen to save people from allergies and stuff like this. So unless we're going to employ hundreds and thousands of Mrs. Doubtfires across the country to make sure that people don't eat what they think they're not eating, then this is a really bad decision. And I really hope that, this decision gets appealed. Although I don't know how this would work because it's the Supreme Court of Ohio, right? Does it have to go federal at this point?
It would have to. It would have to. And there are all kinds of who's the FDA. They get involved with labeling foods. I'm sure the FDA is going to have something to say about this.
They love labels. That's why they exist. Let's just slap a name on everything.
Madcraft on the stream says we should find out how to scientifically grow a boneless chicken. Well, guess what, Madcraft? They have figured out how to scientifically alter a chicken so that it has Uh, talking about chickens here, so that they have larger breasts and they have smaller heads, like smaller beaks, less bone, less waste, less material that can't be sold.
Are
as
these Brazilian
food.
chickens?
Yeah, exactly. No, they come out of Vegas, Miami, and Brazil. Right,
Yeah,
that's how you
this
get them.
tastes like
Them
plastic.
chickens with the big old chicken thighs. Right, that's where they came from.
The BBCs.
No, so one time when I was in college, I was living in Boone, North Carolina, and I drove down the road and we had KFC, and there was a protest going on outside of the KFC. Now, a lot of people have changed how they feel about KFC over the years. I don't know if you remember any of this stuff, Carlos, but I just remember always thinking KFC's chicken is delicious. Like it is good. There was a whole South Park episode about how tasty and delicious KFC
Were they
chicken
the ones
is.
that were finger looking good? Was that KFC?
Yeah, that was them. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
And it
That
was
was
finger
them.
looking good.
Like the other restaurants were kind of gross, at least the one that I went to, because it was all buffet style, right? You would get your chicken from the counter, and then you would go out to the buffet and you would scoop your own mashed potatoes and all that kind of stuff, right? So the restaurants were a little dirty, but that's just kind of the nature of buffets. It's not necessarily KFC. These protesters went in and got some chicken.
Yeah,
you're not gonna tell me not to have a good time.
Before I came to the show, I stopped for Popeyes, so I have no shame in letting you know that fried chicken is being consumed in this household.
So is a boneless chicken wing even a chicken wing?
No, it's an adult nugget. Again, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But yeah, I'm not going to call it a chicken wing because, what would those be? Will this be like nubs that the chickens have? Like they're not.
Maybe
they're
they
not
should call them
blind,
chicken nubs. That's a good question.
Nubs not bad.
If the FDA was going to get involved and say, guess what, you can't call them chicken wings because they don't come from the wing of the chicken, what would we call it? Right? Like, because I guess adult chicken nuggets has a negative connotation. You're not going to say adult chicken nuggets. What would you call them? Like nuggies? Would you call them like chicken bro nugs? Something like that? Like, what would you call it?
You can make them fancy, put a little accent over to you, and just call them Lenugs.
Lenugs.
Yes, I'd like an order of Lenugs, please.
And it is Buffalo Wild Wing, by the way.
The blue.
Buffalo Wild Wing has been accredited by the National Chicken Council as the inventors of the quote-unquote boneless chicken wings, because they are the first ones to ever put boneless chicken wings on their menu. And it only happened 21 years ago. Celebrate. We didn't celebrate that date, the boneless chicken wing date.
Yeah,
but it happened 21 years ago.
I don't care what the chicken council says. I don't think that's true. I would almost challenge that decision more than I would that boneless wings should have bones.
Plus, a boneless chicken wing most of the time comes from breast meat. So it's like it's a chicken tender that comes from breast meat. It's just been cut down into smaller pieces. You're actually getting leaner chicken if you're eating boneless chicken wings.
Yeah.
So we need to stop the hate.
I can go for a boneless wing right now.
We need to stop all the boneless chicken wing slander. No, it's not a chicken wing, but yes, it's absolutely delicious. I don't care what anyone has to say. It's Wire to Wire with Diesel and Carlos with a K live from New York City. You can get in the comment section on Facebook and on YouTube. Just search for The Fan Upstate. We'd love for you to throw us a follow, a subscribe, whatever platform it is you're watching on. We're also taking your text messages at 71307. Just start your text with keyword fan. Let's see here. Trey from Kentucky says, I am conservative. These judges are just eat up with dumbass. Thank you, Trey. Thank you, Trey from Kentucky. I mean, he is from Kentucky. They are the experts on fried chicken and bourbon. So we got to listen to what Trey has to say.
Yeah, it's not called Illinois fried chicken. It's not called Nebraska fried chicken. Dare I would never have California fried chicken. So yeah, I think Trey would be an expert in these kind of things.
Time to take a break. When we get back, we're going to hit our daily wires, take a quick look around the sports world. We'll hit that next on the Fan Upstates. Opening ceremonies are underway in Paris, floating down that poop river. All the athletes out there waving. I'm sure they're waving not to show off their national pride, but it's probably to ward off all the flies that are floating around in that poo-infested water there in the opening games and Paris. Are you into the opening ceremonies, Carlos? Does that ever do anything for you at all?
Well, me dropping my microphone says no, but no, I agree with my microphone. If it's on, I'll watch it, but I'm not going to go out of my way to. To be honest, if I completely forgot about the Olympics until Tuesday. It's Friday. If I didn't work in this industry, I'd have no idea the Olympics were on.
Well, they're doing their opening ceremonies in a glorified drainage ditch as the Seine River in Paris is filthy, is gross. The mayor of Paris jumped in to show that the water is clean enough for you to get into. They didn't show the 6 showers that she took after that was over to get all this human excrement. Like nobody protests like the French. They all had a schedule that said, hey, if you live here, here's when you need to poo in the river. So to make sure it floats down to the area where the mayor and the president didn't get in. The president of France did not get in to the water. Only the mayor. He let his peon mayor of Paris do that. But it's time to take a look around the sports world. It's what we call our daily wires. Oh, you're drinking right now. You didn't get a chance to do the buzz. Bzz. Thank you very much. He'll get it one of these days. Georgia wide receiver Rodarius Rara Thomas was arrested early this morning on multiple family violence charges. Is being held at the Athens Clarke County Jail. He is charged. This is bad. I think if innocent until proven guilty, right? But if this comes to fruition off the team, he's being charged with cruelty to children, family violence, a second-degree felony, and 2 misdemeanor counts of battery and family violence. So rough stuff happening down there with the Georgia football program. We're going to get deeper into this story later on in the show, but it's unfathomable, Carlos, why the University of Georgia keeps having so many discipline issues in the offseason. It's not unique to Georgia. I'm not trying to say that's the only place where players get rowdy in the offseason, but it happens constantly at Georgia. Even former head coach of the South Carolina Gamecocks and Florida Gators, Steve Spurrier, used to have a joke. Says, I always like playing Georgia early in the season because, a couple of their guys are going to be suspended for our game. I mean, he always had the best one-liners, but this stuff keeps happening at Georgia, and I'm going to get into it later on in the show. I think Kirby Smart has to get a hold of this, or it's going to tarnish his legacy long-term. If he can't get a hold of this, it's going to reflect badly on him and on Georgia forever. I mean, think about Miami and Florida State, 2 other programs that were known to have massive disciplinary issues, and we all still talk about it. We all still think about what those 2 programs did. Next up, James Franklin said we're probably one of the few programs in the country where you can win 10 or 11 games and people are unhappy. He's talking about his Penn State Nittany Lions. Paul Feinbaum slammed back at him, and I want to get your reaction to what old Paul had to say.
Okay. Well, James, they're unhappy with you. You're a very competent coach. You've done a nice job. You haven't done enough. Penn State fans expect excellence. They expect championships. They're getting a little tired of 10-2 seasons that the 2 biggest games of the year you blow, or last year the bowl game. That does not cut it. And for $9-10 million a year, it's just not enough. And James has got a big break though, Greeny. There is now a playoff, so he can blow those games as he usually does and still get to the playoffs and probably get knocked out in the first round.
Your reaction? Yeah.
He's not wrong whatsoever. I work with a couple of Penn State alums out in the Infinity Sports Network, which is a national show. By the way, you can catch me on the Bart Winkler Show, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern. Shameless plug. But these Penn State dudes, they are absolutely bonkers. They're always complaining about their quarterback situation, whether it was Sean Clifford, which, by the way, in midseason form threw 3 picks in training camp the other day for the Packers. So there's that. Drew Aller, I'm sure, is going to be throwing some late picks for Penn State to pick up where he left off. But yeah, James Franklin has underwhelmed. He's had great players come into the organization. Like the first one that comes to my mind is Saquon Barkley. And much like the Giants couldn't win with him, he couldn't win with them. So, Paul Feinbaum, who's been taking aim at a lot of coaches lately. We were talking about his comments against Matt Rule yesterday. He's not wrong in this regard. I mean, you're just not doing enough. I mean, it's not enough to win games in the regular season. You have to get into the playoffs and you have to make a dent. Dare say win one of these things once in a while. You can't run into a title. I mean, Michigan finally got off the schneid, but what do you have to do in order to force James Franklin to, really start coaching up to what everybody thought he was going to be? I'm not mad at Feinbaum at all with this. I think if anything, he let him off the hook a little bit. He should have poured more gasoline on that fire.
What does he need at Penn State that he doesn't already have? I mean, the only thing I can think of, I'm talking about the ability to recruit these guys. Maybe you just need a more robust NIL situation because you got all the money you could possibly need at Penn State. JD, good line here, says the playoffs will be a mulligan fest. So you can lose a game in the regular season. It doesn't matter because you could still get into the playoffs.
Hell, you could lose 2 games now with this expansion.
The Seattle Mariners acquired all-star outfielder Randy Arozarena from the Tampa Bay Rays. I know you're more of a baseball guy than I am. Does that send any shockwaves around Major League Baseball?
Yeah, it happened late last night. I was actually floored because usually you don't see deals like that kind of late at night. I guess maybe it was a West Coast thing because he is going to Seattle. But yeah, listen, Arozarena, he looked like he was a star about 2 years ago. Now the Rays as a whole have underperformed. But I am surprised that they kind of, they kind of let him go. He's only 29 years old still. Seattle really needed offense. They've been in a bit of a skid the last couple of games where there's not enough firepower in their lineup. And they also lost someone to injury. The name just escapes me right now, so I feel like a fraud. But this helps boost their lineup up a little bit. And if he can get back into form where he was as all-star caliber player just last year, then I think this is a good deal for Seattle. Now, I will caution this for Mariners fans. Usually, the Tampa Bay Rays do not lose in trades. When they get rid of a guy, they usually get rid of a guy just as he's about to get over the hump of any type of skill that they have, and he starts to get into the back half of their career. Now, again, Arozarena is still pretty young, so I don't know if that'd be the case here. But Tampa Bay usually knows what they're doing, especially if they start trading pitchers. They always get out of guys before they break down.
So if you saw just a really confused look on my face here, I'm watching the Paris opening ceremonies over Carlos's shoulder here on this computer screen, and they had a guy on stage looking like he was walking down a catwalk in Paris, but he was dressed like a really fancy looking Nazgul from Lord of the Rings, just long rags coming out of his tuxedo.
Face?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, then that's cool. Cool.
He had a cover over his face. He was flipping around, doing his parkour, going down the stretch there. And I thought he was that close to his torch going out. Like, I'm sure there's like some failsafe in there to keep it from going out. Like, the pressure is always there. But man, I thought in the rain, doing these acrobatic moves that he was doing, that he was going to lose his torch there. Okay, let's see. Simone Biles, she's going to be doing a brand new move that's never been done at the Olympics before in the bars. If she can successfully complete it, it will be her 6th original move in the Olympics. Congratulations to Simone Biles on that. The Canadian Olympic Committee CEO David Shoemaker said that new information came out that suggests Coach Bev Priestman knew about the spy drone that was looking at New Zealand's practice before it happened, and that the spy drone made 2 separate flights over the practice. So yeah, that's bad. That's bad. You can't be spying on
New Zealand anyway. Like, I don't understand. Did you really need the drones for this? You lost your job? What a putz.
And finally, 29 days to ACC football, 34 days until SEC football. When we come back, we're going to talk NASCAR with Shane Connick of the Charlotte Observer. Carlos, it'll be your first time asking him questions. Excited to see what you want to know about NASCAR, and we want the Tolos to submit your questions as well on Facebook or on YouTube on the stream. We'll get to Shane Connick next. Coming off the Brickyard 400, one of the most exciting races in NASCAR. I love it. I love odd-shaped tracks that make these guys think just a little bit. We go to the phone lines now. Shane Connick, who writes about NASCAR for the Charlotte Observer. Make sure you look him up and find his content at Shane_Connick on Twitter. Shane, you called the ending to the Brickyard 400 ridiculous. I say that a lot about NASCAR is ridiculous these days. Explain to me what got you so up in arms about the ending of the Brickyard 400.
Well, like you just said, the Brickyard 400 is always a great race. Indianapolis Motor Speedway always produces good races, but this is a race that did not feature any on-track passing. This is a race that ended up going to overtime, ended up having Kyle Larson win. But the reality is that when the 41 car of Ryan Preece went around, it couldn't move. It was obvious to everybody there. And any other scenario, whenever you see a car end up off the track in any situation, whether they move the car immediately or not, they wave the yellow flag. And that's especially been the precedent in overtime. But this time, Kyle Larson's in the lead. They wait. Elton Sawyer explained earlier this week on Sirius XM, they thought that Preece would be able to just keep going, but then as soon as he moves it a little bit, they realized he couldn't. At that point, Larson had just taken the white flag, and they called the caution that they seemingly could have for every other reason that they would have called it on any other lap, thrown that yellow flag just before Larson took the white flag. So in the end of the day, though, to your point, it's a great race. Kyle Larson won, and a few weeks ago, we had a race in Nashville go about 5 overtimes, and Joey Logano ended up winning. And I don't think anybody felt that that was a legitimate reflection of the entire race. This race, in a lot of ways, at Indianapolis was the ultimate kind of assessment of strong drivers in a lot of ways. The top 5 cars in the points qualified in the top 5 starting positions and ran in the front throughout the race. And Kyle Larson, arguably the greatest driver in the sport right now, won it with Tyler Reddick, probably arguably one of the fastest Toyotas, finished in second. So it really ended up being a strong race, but still, if you're going by the rules, which we go, or you're going by what seems to happen every other week, the caution would have been thrown, and Larson still could have won it on the 3rd overtime, but maybe you run into a national situation. But either way, a good race and a Kyle Larson victory.
Oh, Shane, what's going on? It's Carlos. First of all, thanks for following me on Twitter. So not only are you a friend of the show, but you're a friend of me, so I appreciate that. But you know, one of the calls that, rather one of the drivers that was impacted by that call with Larson winning was Ryan Blaney. But it looks like he's going to be okay. We haven't had a back-to-back winner of a Cup Series championship since Jimmy Johnson won 5 straight back in 06 to 2010. Blaney looks like he's the closest to do it right now, despite the finish at the Brickyard. How much of a chance do you give him to defend the title and possibly go back-to-back here?
Yeah, Carlos, great to talk with you as well. And I see you got the WFAN in your profile pic there. I've listened to a lot of WFAN in my life as well. Now, Ryan Blaney has a legitimate shot to go back-to-back. Last year, it didn't necessarily feel all year like he would be the guy who would be representing the sport as its champion by the end of the season, but he won the Coca-Cola 600 to snap a long winless streak, and then from there, that catapulted him into the playoffs. And then he got wins and top 10 finishes when he needed to as the playoffs went on and ended up winning the championship. And now this year has noted that he's had a bit of a changed mindset, because before, especially when he had that winless streak, he felt he was really just doing everything in his power to win a race. At that point, he's approaching 30 years old. He's been in the sport a while. Now he's a champion. He's realized that it's not as important to shoot for first place in every single race at a certain point. And he's been able to put together a lot of strong finishes this year. And now, guess what? He has 2 wins to his name when most drivers have 1, or most of them have none. The ones who do have 1, few have 3, and now Larson with 4. So Ryan Blaney has become one of the best drivers in the sport this year, a year after he made his way to the championship. So Ryan Blaney has just as much of a chance as he had last year to repeat, and the 12th car has been fast.
Shane Connick of the Charlotte Observer joining us here on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Carlos with a K. I saw on your Twitter, Shane, about Rangers parking being $165.
Yeah.
First of all, tell me you did not pull into that parking garage.
Oh,
Second of
no.
all, tell me if you did, the Charlotte Observer got you back on that one. And third, what is the most surprisingly unreasonable charge you've seen at a NASCAR event?
So I was in Arlington for the American Athletic Conference football media days, and fortunately I did not have a rental car, but I was just walking around checking out Globe Life Field, AT&T Stadium, that area, and there's a garage, and typically the highest prices you see, sometimes it's $50 in certain places, or typically even 25 certain cities, and all of a sudden in the middle of Arlington, Texas, it's just not 100, it's just 165, and it very clearly says for that one particular event, that night's Rangers game. I have never seen a price anywhere that's been that high. At NASCAR, I would say it doesn't seem like they have that crazy prices, to be honest. And I was actually talking to Cole about this here from a fan perspective a bit about rules about stuff you're allowed to take in with you compared to other sporting events. But either way, it just has to be typical stadium concession type prices. And something to note about NASCAR, that I can't think of any super outlandish prices off the top of my head. And for most sporting events, you could think of many.
Shane, yeah, I know with baseball, and you being a baseball fan, you know about this as well. You know, a lot of these stadiums will have their really over-the-top priced concession item that's more of just marketing online. You know, there will be the $500 Wagyu burger I think they sell at Truist Park in Atlanta. I mean, have we seen NASCAR tracks getting in on that, where Daytona will try to come up with something unique to put on their menu, and Nashville will put something very unique on their menu? Have we seen that at all in NASCAR?
We've started to see tracks create atmospheres, and I think it relates even to the bigger concept that you see these new stadiums be built, or stadiums that exist, and they want to build a whole entertainment district around that stadium, kind of like what Atlanta's really done around Truist Park. And so with these racetracks, they want to make the infield not like, oh, you walk around and you do get the whole garage and experience, but that you have restaurants and little clubs. And in Phoenix, you see different restaurants that fit the culture, have different. At Daytona, you have a lot of different bars like that as well. And it just is a different vibe at different tracks, I feel like. And the Phoenixes and the Daytonas, they clearly want to have that slightly newer, big event kind of feel. Charlotte in some ways as well. And then other tracks, you go to Martinsville and it's just a lot more. You walk around the infield and there's just not as much space. And they want it to be that the only food you're for the most part getting is that hot dog stand right in the middle of Martinsville Speedway, where you can get a all the way, as they call it, filled hot dog for $1 or $2 or whatever it is.
Can you tell us why Corey LaJoie and Spire Motorsports are calling it quits after a 4-year relationship?
Yeah, I know. Well, not entirely. All we know is that Corey LaJoie announced that he will not be returning to the 7 cars, told The Athletic first. And it comes as Corey LaJoie has found himself in the news a lot these past few weeks, and we've talked about it. And like we talked about last week, Kyle Busch let the Pat McAfee show know about the beef that they've had. And LaJoie, the interesting part of this is that Rodney Childers, he's a known crew chief. He was at the top of the pit box for the number 4 Ford of Kevin Harvick for years. Has been with Josh Berry this past year. Respected crew chief, and now with Stewart Haas Racing closing its doors following this season, Childers had announced that he was going to be going to Spire Motorsports to crew chief the 7, and there was no reason to assume that would not be working with Corey LaJoie, considering that the driver is just slightly younger than 30, believe, and he's been in the sport for a while. He's put together strong runs. He's developing. Spire's been an innovative kind of team as it merged with Kyle Busch Motorsports last year. But now with this news, we don't know exactly what's going to be happening with Corey LaJoie, because it had been widely expected that he would be returning to the 7 car with a new and enhanced team. So this is an interesting news that was pretty unexpected, I think, within a lot of these team changes that go on this time of year.
Yeah, with LaJoie leaving, are you hearing any of the rumors of his replacement? And you mentioned Kyle Busch. He might be one of the names to watch out for. Who do you got a good feel that could be in the run-in to fill that spot for Spire next year?
It seems like Kyle Busch will, in fact, be returning to RCR. Do feel like Kyle Busch, a lot of people feel like if he were in a different car with a different team, maybe he'd have some better results. Either way, he is committed to working with Childress. They plan on potentially even bringing on another charter. But with Michael McDowell now joining Spire Motorsports, it seems like he will be in the 71, believe not necessarily the 7. I think if they don't end up moving Michael McDowell to the 7, wouldn't be surprised if Spire even goes after a Todd Gilliland kind of driver, and somebody who's been putting together strong runs, finds himself toward the front different points in races, and maybe just needs a slightly better ride.
Shane Connick, the Charlotte Observer, joining us here on the Fan Upstate. There's been a lot of upheaval with drivers moving around teams this year. A lot of crazy stuff has happened on the track as well. So far, and I realize that we still have a little bit of time left in this season, including the playoffs. What moment do you think will be talked about for the longest time coming out of this season?
Right now, it's the fight that went down at North Wilkesboro. We've had our share of big moments this year, but that felt like as big of a storyline as you're going to get. And it also really helps that was in the All-Star race, when the winner of the race did not earn any points and in a lot of ways was inconsequential compared to every other race, where the winner of that race is a big story in and of itself outside of whatever side story breaks out. That was a fight like that just has not happened in the sport in a while. And the fact that got to take center stage and make its way to the national outlets that it did as quickly as it did, yeah, it's a fight and all that. But you had the feud of Stenhouse getting into with Busch and everything that transpired after that. That has been the most memorable moment of this season for everybody.
Now, if going back to the playoff standings here, there are over a dozen drivers I think are facing must wins, that they got to be able to get one in the book so to keep their playoff chances alive. So, like, I'm looking at guys like Kyle Busch, Michael McDowell, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Chase Briscoe. The list can go on. I think there's at least 15 guys that got to get a win in there. Who of those names, or maybe who's someone I haven't mentioned, who do you think has the most realistic shot to make the playoffs?
So at this point, Kyle Busch has just got to win already, and I think it's going to happen. I heard you say his name a bunch of times in there, and I think we're all thinking that. Yeah. Kyle Busch, even though he's in that 8 car this year, and he was running in 6 toward the end when he spun and ended up prompting overtime in Indianapolis. It's a matter of time before he wins, and especially we head to Richmond in a couple of weeks, the first race after the Olympic break. That could be a good time for Rowdy to return to victory lane in a cup car. And at that point, he's in the playoffs, and that's all he needs to get to. So, yes, I think it's most important for a guy like Busch. And at this point, that Michael McDowell, guys like that haven't won. We've had the Austin Cindrics of the world end up getting wins and getting into the playoffs. It's about time that Kyle Busch gets the win that he needs to get in.
Shane, we spent a lot of time on these airwaves having you on talking about our love for small tracks. I think you, Cole, and I all have that in common. I grew up in Hickory where, they would host a Busch race every couple of years at Hickory Motor Speedway. The wall to pits even says birthplace of the NASCAR stars on it. I love big tracks. They're fun. But when it comes to track design, why is it that we aren't seeing NASCAR really go bigger than what we've seen? I'm thinking like bigger than Talladega or smaller than Bristol. Like, why are we not getting weird with some of these designs? I mean, if we're trying to attract a younger and younger audience, why not just make it Fortnite in real life and these guys are out there racing on some really odd shaped tracks?
Well, in terms of it being smaller, with the Clash, before the season starts in February 4th, around that time, they had at the Los Angeles Coliseum the past few years, they have a track that is smaller than Bristol and Martinsville and all of them. And they were going about 50 or 60 miles an hour in circles, and Denny Hamlin won the thing, and it wasn't even a race. But that's as creative as they've gotten in terms of making it that much smaller, and I don't think the popularity worked at all for a non-points paying race in the middle of Los Angeles, and they think it's a big venue and all that, and doesn't seem to really attract the viewers or the fans out there, and just the way they kind of have anticipated the Clash at the LA Coliseum would. But in terms of having something that's bigger than a Talladega, bigger than 2.5 miles, I think about that sometimes, because when they have these road courses, what if they just had drivers actually drive on roads? What if they actually had drivers drive for miles and make some kinds of pit stops in some ways and really got creative like that, considering that these are just supposed to be stock cars racing, that this started from running away from cops hauling moonshine and racing up and down the beach and the highway in Daytona. I think it's a matter of time before, especially with the street courses that they've incorporated with Chicago and other motorsports series have incorporated in other cities, that NASCAR gets even more creative than a big 2.5 mile track to do something even bigger. And I'm not even talking about what we've always been talking about in just these races on city streets.
Yeah, Shane, it feels like they could make, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit come to life, right? And take this thing back to its roots. Go to the hills of North Carolina, paint one of the stock cars like a cop car, and paint one of them like whatever driver wants to do it. I understand it's probably dangerous to try to force a wreck or force somebody to spin somebody out. But, man, that would be entertaining. I would watch that, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I thought that something like that is exactly what NASCAR needs to eventually figure out how to do. And the fact they figured out how to bring these cup cars to downtown Chicago, it should be a walk in the park.
He is Shane Connick, writes about NASCAR for the Charlotte Observer, has a fantastic Twitter page as well. You should go find him at Shane_Connick. We appreciate your time here today, bud. Thank you much. Have a good weekend.
Shane, take it easy, buddy.
You guys as well. Great talk with you guys, Carlos and Diesel.
Thank you, Shane. That is Shane Connick of the Charlotte Observer. Carlos, for a guy that doesn't follow NASCAR very closely, you have some good questions there, man. You got some good answers out of Shane.
I am a professional, damn it. All right. It's my job to bring questions and answers to the masses. I should have asked him what could get me a filthy casual. If you even want to label me that much into when it comes to NASCAR, what could get me into a race? Damn it. I'll ask him on Twitter, and next time I'm on with you guys, I'll share that answer.
Remember, coming up at the 5 o'clock hour, we have your chance to score a 4-pack of tickets to the Carolina Panthers Fan Fest. It's happening August 1st. We'll get you hooked up with that coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. When we come back, we were talking about Georgia football and the problems that they have keeping their players out of jail. We'll get into that, and I'm going to ask you, what frustrates you most about your favorite football program? So be ready to call in and text in. That's next on the Fan Upstate. If Kirby Smart can't get a hold of all these issues inside the Georgia football program, it will 100% become the legacy of his time at Georgia. Trust me. We got players getting arrested constantly for street racing. We had an issue where a player and a support staff member were killed in 2023 because of street racing immediately following the national championship.
Ugh.
It's following them in 2024 as well. Multiple instances. I can't see why people aren't making a bigger deal out of this, Carlos. Again, I talked about it earlier. A lot of programs have issues. A lot of programs have players who get themselves in trouble. It's not anything new. However, Carlos, am I off base here saying that this will become the legacy of Kirby Smart at Georgia?
No, not at all, because this was the legacy of Urban Meyer in Florida. We've seen these programs go through these stretches where it seems like there's incident after incident with players getting in trouble with the law or getting in trouble with whether it's domestic violence or drunken disorderly conduct or street racing, like you mentioned. No. These are things that happen under a coach's watch that can stick with you. Florida was the first school that came to mind like that, and Georgia's very eerily mirroring that run that Urban Meyer had while he was in charge of them. So no, I don't think it's an exaggeration whatsoever. I think he needs to start cracking down. I mean, the reason why it's not becoming a bigger story, Diesel, is because Georgia's been successful. It's because they've been winning. If they were, if they were someone like Napier who was constantly missing the playoffs and not getting to the college football playoff, then this will get a lot of attention. But because they've been successful, they didn't win last year, obviously, but they were, not that far removed from winning the national championship. If it wasn't for, their recent runs, I think this would be more of a bigger deal. But I think Kirby Smart he's got to take a look in the mirror and start to really tighten up what's going on under his watch, because football coaches, unlike any other administrator in a school, they are directly responsible for what happens, and they have the most control. They know everything that happens on and off the field when it comes to their team.
And the problem is, thus far, Carlos, we haven't gotten much from Kirby Smart that says this really bothers him and he really intends to do something about it. They're saying, oh, we're gonna crack down on these issues within our program, but then they keep happening. So have you really cracked down on these issues within your program? I mean, at SEC Media Days last year, Carlos, Kirby Smart, all he had to say was, it's very unfortunate. It's disappointing. I guess that's the best word for all of these issues that keep going down. Remember in 2023, we talked about it just a second ago, there were all kinds of player violations related to car incidents. 24, as a matter of fact, 24 driving-related violations, including a crash that killed a player and a recruiting staffer in 2023. Now in 2024, we're seeing it again. In July, Smale Munden and Bo Hewley, both arrested on separate misdemeanor driving incidents. Smale Munden was arrested for street racing. Hughley was arrested for failure to maintain proper lane and reckless driving, which tells me he was probably intoxicated. So either he was swerving lanes just because he doesn't know how to drive, or he was swerving lanes because he was intoxicated and that part of it got left out. Well, now, Carlos, it's gotten worse. The discipline issues within Georgia football have gotten worse. And this is why I start comparing what's going on at Georgia to places like what used to go on at Miami, to places like what used to go on at Florida State. Remember when there was a stretch there where it seemed Florida State players kept getting in trouble for theft? There was
Jameis Winston.
There was Jameis Winston. Yeah, then there was the incident with a player. I remember as a kid, I used to go to Clemson games, and somebody helped me out. You can get into the comment section on the stream, Facebook, and on YouTube. Which Florida State player was it that they used to hold up the Bilo card? Like he was arrested for stealing stuff from Bilo. They used to go after him for that. Well, then of course, remember the Catholics versus convicts. They called them the criminals for a reason. They called them the convicts of Miami for a reason, because that stuff kept happening. Well, here's what's going down at Georgia right now. Georgia senior wide receiver Rodarius Rah Thomas was arrested early this morning on multiple family violence charges and was being held in Athens Clarke County Jail. He was arrested and charged with cruelty to children, including family violence, a second-degree felony, and 2 misdemeanor counts of battery and family violence. Of course, the Georgia Athletic Department, they're not commenting on this. They're not getting involved at this point. But this is a bad dude, okay? This is a bad dude coming out of this program. In January 2023, he was arrested by University of Georgia police and accused of felony false imprisonment because he allegedly confined and detained a woman without legal authority by standing in front of the dorm room door, blocking the exit, telling her that she could not leave. He was accused of misdemeanor battery because he allegedly did intentionally cause visible bodily harm by causing bruising to her right bicep and bruising and abrasions to her shins, which, I don't know if you know this, that's a very big part of what got OJ like 10 years plus in jail, by saying you're in this room and you cannot come out. That's what got OJ sent to jail. But somehow, if you play football for a national championship winning team, these kind of things get swept under the rug. I mean, it's just unfathomable to me that Kirby Smart, a guy as buttoned down as he is letting this stuff continue to happen.
Yeah, now I do want to mention here that it looks like a couple minutes ago. This is per Anthony Dasher, who covers Georgia. He tweeted out, per a team source, wide receiver Rah Thomas has been suspended indefinitely by head coach Kirby Smart. So I'm seeing that as about 10 minutes ago. As for per Anthony Dasher's Twitter here. Maybe it's a start. Maybe Kirby's finally starting to feel the heat of letting all these things happen under his watch. Because again, we talked about we talked about a little bit about the infractions already that you've laid out so eloquently. I think it's getting too big to ignore, and you want to be remembered for winning. You want to be remembered for the good stuff. You don't want to be remembered for any of the crap and the police getting involved and everything else. Like again, I always associate Urban Meyer not with winning in Florida, but I remember all the crap that went down under his watch. Remember, this is a guy that Aaron Hernandez played for. We know how that turned out. So he really needs to really, I don't want to say crack the whip because that has negative connotations, but it really needs to take charge of his program. So maybe this is a start. Maybe by suspending Rah Thomas here, that he's starting to maybe understand that he needs to get a handle on things here.
Zenny on the stream says, if true, he should be let go. If he has had prior charges, he shouldn't be on the team in the first place. Well, I think it probably has to come down to prior convictions, not prior charges. If these things are reduced, dropped, whatever, some of these coaches aren't prepared to make those kind of decisions, especially if they're starters, which kind of goes back to the way things have always been. The starters on the teams, they get away with more. Let's see. Miami, Madcraft says Miami had a player murdered and took a team photo around his memorial. 14 years later, his own teammate in the photo was charged with the crime.
Yeah.
Doesn't get worse than that.
Crazy.
Yeah. It's just brutal. Let's see. He is responsible for the team, says Zenny, talking about Kirby Smart there. It's one of two things, Carlos. It's either they take a chance on guys with checkered pasts who these character issues, a lot of programs won't take guys like that. If they've had prior character issues in high school, and they talk to their coaches, they ask like, what kind of guy is this? What kind of an individual am I bringing into my program? One of two things is happening. Kirby Smart is ignoring those things, or he believes that he can correct those kind of issues with players like this, or there's a culture in that program of doesn't matter what coach has to say. Doesn't matter. I can do what I want. I can go out and street race if I want to. And of course, that's just going to keep getting worse as we're putting, enough money in these guys' pockets to go out and buy sports cars and Lamborghinis. Yep. It's not like it's a new thing of college athletes having fast cars, right? But now we're potentially putting Lamborghini money in their pockets. We're putting Ferrari money in their pockets, or even NIL deals that they're getting that they get one of those cars. I mean, I think that this is going to become just such a big, ugly issue that Kirby Smart in Georgia will never outrun an issue like this within that program.
Yeah, but what do they say is the greatest deodorant in sports? It's winning. Winning,
Yeah.
winning covers all stenches. So as long as he's able to remain schedule, and most people think that Georgia will kind of right the ship, so to speak, after losing last year. If they continue to be successful, I don't want to say these things that get swept under the rug, but it won't be as big of a deal as it should be.
I don't think the court of public opinion forgets these sorts of things anymore. These kind of accusations have a way of sticking. They have a way of sticking around, and I don't think Kirby Smart, unless he somehow finds a way to start running a squeaky clean program, which a lot of the times at the tippy top, you can't run a squeaky clean program. It's incredibly difficult. You're an individual, right? And you've got a small staff around you, and they are tasked with managing the actions and hopefully preventing bad actions of 100+ guys. You just can't do it. It's not possible. You cannot be with them holding their hand at all time. But I do question, there's that old saying, they say, like, this is a player-run team. That's how you get to the point where it's not just the 25 guys on the coaching staff who are managing these players. It's everybody on the team who is managing these players. And they need some you're right. They absolutely need some on-the-team player-led leadership to get a hold of this thing, because it's getting really, really bad. And if you're a Georgia fan, that's got to be right now basically the only thing that bugs you about your program, right? I mean, you're winning, you're going to the playoff. Even in years that you're not going to the playoff, you're having phenomenal football seasons. You've got the best recruiting classes year in and year out. Everything seems to be good for you if you're a Georgia football fan. But I want to know from you Clemson fans, from you Gamecock fans, what is the thing about your program or its fan base that bugs you the most? If you're a Clemson fan, it ought to be that you've got this really insular fan base that nobody can say anything bad about the program, or you're not one of us. You're not a good fan if you're willing to question what we've got going on here. And we see a lot of that, Carlos. We hear a lot of people calling into the show, kind of that clutching of the pearls. How dare you say anything that's not completely complimentary of Dabo Swinney? If you're a Clemson Tiger fan, you're allowed to have dissenting opinions, and you should be allowed to voice those freely.
Yeah, no, listen, I've been coming down and parachuting from where my neck of the woods for going on 2 years. It's actually been a hell of a run for filling in here so I'm very well adverse of how the Tiger fan could be. It's okay to be critical of your team. It doesn't make you a bad fan. In fact, it makes you more of a fan because you have expectations. When you blindly follow somebody, you're no longer a fan. You're now part of a cult. And I don't think anybody wants to be a part of a cult here, especially one that wears orange. So I see that a little bit with Clemson fans. I don't want to paint them all in one bucket, in one brushstroke. But it certainly seems to be a common denominator with a lot of down there.
And you South Carolina fans, you're not getting off the hook. For South Carolina fans, what should frustrate you most about your team and about your fan base is that fans at South Carolina, Carlos, constantly get their hopes up way too high and then allow themselves to be crushed by disappointment.
Like Mets fans.
Right. And here's the crazy part. There's one step farther than that. Then they hold on to the coaches that they have far too long because they hope that they can get it right. I'm talking about Muschamp, who kept getting his extensions. And there were fans who were saying, oh, we can't let Muschamp go. We can't. Who are we going to get that's better than Will Muschamp? There's a lot of options out there. You just got to open up the checkbook and go get them. Right. And that's exactly where South Carolina fans find themselves potentially with Shane Beamer. He's a guy that, feels good. Like, he feels like one of your guys. He came in with a lot of positive energy, and that was absolutely fantastic. But eventually, you got to start looking at the win-loss record and say, this guy ain't getting it done. We can't hold on to this guy forever if he's not able to get it done.
Yeah, 8-9 wins can't cut it anymore. You're not a small mom-and-pop organization. I think fans need to start realizing that they have a top 25 program on their hands. You don't need to act like, the little brother anymore. Start throwing your weight around and kind of what you said, open up those purse strings, get somebody with some cachet that can come in and take you from a top 25 to a top 15 to a top 10. Dare to expect greatness. You don't need to hope for the best. Start expecting it. Demand more out of your organization.
Yeah, my hope out of Shane Beamer was that he would be a culture changer. I never really had the highest of high hopes that Shane Beamer was going to get South Carolina into the college football playoff, into the 4-team college football playoff. But I truly believed, and I'm not saying that this hasn't happened to some degree in Columbia, but I truly believed that Shane Beamer had the ability to change the culture within that program, because under Will Muschamp, there was so much negativity floating around that fan base and that team. Yeah. And that Shane Beamer came in as a breath of fresh air and was going to be able to turn this thing around to really a much more positive vibe from that program. I think he's done a pretty good job of that. Ultimately, though, the wins have to come. And if you're not winning, you got to get your ass out the door, go be a coordinator somewhere else, right? Yeah, I used to say, you can't win. Yeah, I used to say, if you can't win, go be a coordinator on Nick Saban's staff, rehab your image, and guess what? You'll get another head coaching chance in a couple of years. But now maybe it's go be on Kirby Smart's staff and help discipline the young athletes there in Athens. When we come back, it's time for Carlos to ask a big old question for you Atlanta Braves fans. And this is a tough one, man. I've been musing over this for the last 2 hours since you put this on the rundown. I don't even know where I'm going to go with my answer. That's next on the Fan Upstates. I just want to watch you dance on the stream. Carlos with a K.
Careful how that sounds.
Coming straight out of Queens, New York.
I was like, we could take that fully out of context. I'm gonna need a drop for that too.
So you ask a very interesting question here of Atlanta Braves fans, and these are according to some suffering Atlanta Braves fans, according to others, all is well, nothing to see here. We're good, Atlanta Braves fans. You asked the question, would you rather the Braves suck now and miss the playoffs or get hot late only to get bounced in the first round?
Yeah. Now I asked that question because I'm facing something, a little bit more similar, but also a little bit more concrete in my team. I'm a Cubs fan. I don't know if anybody could see behind me on the stream. Be alert for foul balls. That's a sign that they have at Wrigley with a little bear chasing down a foul ball. And if it's anything like a bear on this team, he's going to drop it because the Cubs absolutely stink. So they've already announced a couple days ago. General Manager Jed Hoyer said the Cubs would be sellers at the next week's deadline, which is Tuesday. So I wanted to ask everybody here because I might have been a little hard on Braves fans yesterday, maybe a tad bit, maybe not hard enough about mocking where you are in the standings right now and having the Phillies be the best team record-wise in the majors in your division and you're being 9 back. And seemingly it seems the NL East is going to be out of reach here. But let's say you're not the Cubs, you're not the Phillies, you are where you are right now. This is a question that I struggle with. Would I rather just be defeated now and checked out for the entire season or get sucked back in? You give me hope and then squash that hope come the postseason. So Braves fans, I present the question to you because you're farther along than my Cubbies will be this year. We have already announced that we're going to sell. You're in an interesting position where I don't think you'd sell off. Maybe you either stand pat or you have to get a couple of arms in the bullpen to help out and maybe get an extra bat in here, especially with Olsen hitting under 200. What would you rather have? Would you rather just absolutely stink right now? Or do you want to get hot? Do you want that hope, but get bounced out in the first round? I mean, ultimately you're going to lose. Would you rather die now or later?
Making the playoffs is still making the playoffs, which is always good, right? It's certainly, you didn't ask the question or you didn't present the scenario in which you get bounced out of the first round. If you get swept out of the first round, well, yeah, that's ugly.
That's a good point. Yeah.
That sucks. Now, if you were to take that game all the way to the final game of the series, okay, I mean, you can maybe sort of justify that just a little bit, but I look at it like, what would Alex Anthopoulos do? What's Brian Snitker going to do? What's the staff going to do there with this team if you suck now and don't make the playoffs? Does that mean they now feel forced to change everything they do and everything, the way that this team is built, which is built on hitting home runs? They're not built on getting guys on base and moving them around with steals and singles to the outfield. They're not built that way. They're built to hit home runs. And I just wonder if you really want to go through that, if you really want to change the entire makeup of this team because of one bad injury-riddled season.
Yeah, I mean, if you are going to look at the trade market, why aren't you calling the San Francisco Giants, man? They look like they're about to get rid of some players. You mentioned it yesterday. Maybe starting rotation is not something they need to address, like they have players there. But could I interest you in Blake Snell if that were a potential trade option for you? Do you think that can help your team out?
Yeah, Blake Snell is definitely a guy that could bolster this team a little bit. I mean, we know that we know that pitching has been an issue for the Atlanta Braves, right? Their starting pitching is okay, but I think the starting pitching is sort of pitching above itself right now with its ace out. And it's doing fine. So do you feel like you have to do something with the starting pitching? Middle relievers, closers, by God, the Atlanta Braves need to be making moves in that department because they cannot win games the way they're hitting right now if they're only scoring, if they're scoring 4 or 5 runs a game, but they're giving up 7, 8, 9 a game. That's the problem with the Braves. The starting pitching is doing a great job holding down batters early in games, but then they're giving up a lot of runs late, and this team is just not hitting well enough to be able to outpace the 8-9 runs that their bullpen is giving up every game.
Yeah, they're now on the offensive side. There is another target also on the Giants that I'd be targeting if you're looking to make a move. Michael Conforto, he's hitting 226, which isn't great, but he's got 10 home runs and 40 RBIs in 80 games. So if you need a little bit of pop on a pretty relatively cheap deal, Michael Conforto, who you should be familiar with when he was on a Met, so you have that in-division look. That's somebody you might be targeted also. Also here, just looking at the chat, Matt Kraft mentioned Zach Eflin. Zach Eflin, the reason why I didn't bring him up, do you really want to make a deal with the Rays who traded Randy Arozarena? I mentioned this earlier in the show. The Rays usually don't come out on the losing end for these trades, especially when it comes to starting pitching. I think you may want to hang back, let Zach Eflin go to the Yankees, let the Rays fleece them, and that way you're not going to be stuck with a lemon in a couple of weeks.
When we come back, it's time for Carlos and I to fight about it. We put up our dukes. We go head-to-head on 3 very important, life-changing issues. Next on the Fan Upstate. wired. It's wire to wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Cole out of the country, doing his thing down in Nicaragua, having a good time down there. He'll be back on Monday of next week. I am joined right now by Carlos with a K, coming straight out of Queens, New York. Carlos, take over for just a second, my friend, because I'm choking on a splinter over here.
Oh, he's just getting emotional. He misses his boy Cole. So hope Cole's having a good trip. I forgot who I wanted to yell at. On the text line here says, "I miss Cole." Are you trying to take a shot at me? You can miss Cole and not take a shot at me. Those things can be mutually exclusive.
He may be taking a shot at me. He may think I suck.
Oh, well, then I wouldn't disagree with that.
Good. I'm glad you're picking fights before the fight. That way, when I yell at you, I can actually mean it. It's the 5 o'clock fight. We do it each and every day here at 5 o'clock. It is the most interactive with segment on the show. That's because we have to disagree with each other. That's the rules. I present a scenario. I present 3 scenarios, as a matter of fact. We fight about it. We have to take different sides of the argument. It's called the 5 o'clock fight.
It's an all-out slugfest, and nobody's leaving unscathed. 3 topics, 1 winner. It's the 5 o'clock fight on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson on the Fan Upstate.
Here's how this works, Tolos. 3 different topics about life and sports. We fight about it. We disagree. You tell us who wins each round of the fight. You can text in at 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. You can also message in on the stream on Facebook and on YouTube. Just search for the Fan Upstate if you want to jump in and watch our lovely faces as we do the show live here. Here we go with round number 1. Carlos, you're at a restaurant, but you're not quite hungry enough to finish your entire meal.
Sounds about right.
What do? Do you take it home as leftovers, or do you push through and finish it all at the restaurant?
All right. So yesterday, if I understand the rules correctly, you usually alternate which position will get taken first. I will be a nice guy. I will let you go first on this one, and I will take the opposing view.
That's nice. That's nice, because I always push through and eat it there. I got nothing really against leftovers, but what I have against taking restaurant leftovers home and finishing them later is that they're never as good as they were when they were fresh out of the kitchen at the restaurant. My wife and I, we went the other night, we got steaks for dinner. Delicious steaks for dinner. Here's the deal. That thing is now cold in the refrigerator. It was cooked to a beautiful medium rare, but if I heat it back up, it's now going to be a medium or potentially a medium well. If I want to bring that thing back up to hot steak eating temperature, I now have to overcook the steak to get it back to where I want to. So I would rather eat it there when it's as good as it's possibly going to taste.
Let me remind you, gluttony is a sin. All right. That being said,
so is wastefulness.
That made me laugh. Let me tell you this. Why on earth would you skip on the opportunity to get a bonus meal? You take the stuff with you. You take it with you because, yeah, if you can't finish it there, fine. You get a bonus dinner. You get a bonus lunch. My wife and I went to IHOP the other day. She couldn't finish her pancakes, hash browns, steak tips. I had a bonus breakfast. I heated up pancakes because that's the American thing to do. We don't waste food here. No, you don't throw it away. And I certainly will not overeat because I don't want to roll out of the restaurant. I don't want to barf there. Maybe I'm leaving just a little bit of room to get that cheesecake down the street. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes you want to finish off a nice dinner with a good dessert. And you can't do that if you push through. So call me the leftover king. I'm microwaving all that stuff. Take it with you.
I have coined a phrase. I don't know if I'm the first. I think I'm the first one to come up with this, Carlos. It's called uncomfortable. It's when you get so full that you're uncomfortable that you're like, oh, my stomach hurts.
Yeah, I can barely put on my pants as it is.
I can't button my pants. Uncomfortable. Yeah, or miserable. If you want to take it one step farther, when you get miserable, when you're like, ugh, I hate my life. I shouldn't have done that. That's round 1 of the 5 o'clock fight. Here we go with fight number 2. Carlos, what is the better sports date option? A round of golf with your lady or taking in a baseball game with your lady?
All right, let me tell you, I am the biggest baseball fan on the planet. Well, maybe not on the planet, but I am definitely a big baseball fan. I used to play baseball. Everybody knows my love affair with baseball. You want to score. You take that lady or man. No, we don't judge here. You take them for a round of golf. Even if you suck, you have a good time. And let me tell you why. You can get up and close personal with golf. Say you have a nice lady friend. She's never played golf before. She's going to go in
the hips.
She's going to go in for that putt. She doesn't know how to hold the clubs, presumably so, unless she's a pro golfer. Then maybe she should be rubbing up on you and teaching you. But you get behind her, put your hands around the waist. Like, oh, no. Hold the 9-iron like this. And go ahead and just rock the hips with her. Get a preview of what's going to happen later on. You go for a round of golf. Listen, baseball, what's there to look at? You're going to go drink a beer? You can do that anywhere. Go play a round of golf. Get it some nice exercise. Warm up for some cardio activities that you'll probably have later on. Golf all the way.
Carlos, if she's good at golf, then she's probably not going out with you.
That's not true. She could go out with me and I could suck at golf. And she probably feel better about the fact that she's going out with somebody who doesn't play golf because now she could be the reason that you get into golf.
No. You take her to a ball game because you're guaranteed to have a good time at a ball game, right? Like nobody's ever had a bad
unless
time.
It's the Braves.
Unless she's a hardcore fan. Now you take her to a baseball game, Carlos, because golf can be one of the most frustrating experiences of your life. If you get out there and you stink and she stinks, by hole number 5, she's pissed. She's miserable. She goes, I don't know how to hold a club. I keep hitting the ball and hitting it over there. I keep topping the ball. It's not going where I want it to go. I've lost every ball that I've paid for to come out here and play a round of golf. I've just paid $60, $70 for this. Why? I'm miserable. I hate this. And I say this from experience, Carlos. Remember when I first started taking my wife to play golf? That's exactly what would happen. She would be miserable by hole number 5. Now that she's gotten into golf just a little bit, knows how to play just a little bit, she loves it. But the thing is, you take her to a baseball game, man, it's just like it's fantastic. People watching, you're just there, you're very relaxed. You don't have this pressure of, well, if I play bad, she's gonna think of me as less of a man. Now you just take her to the ball game, have a nice relaxing date. That's the better date idea. Here we go. One more fight to go.
Final round. Fight.
Are boneless wings? Simple as that. Are boneless wings?
Well, in the spirit of the game, are boneless wings?
You gonna let me go first?
Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna say it. Boneless wings are wings because it's written right there on the menu. Boneless wings. It's 2024, Carlos. You can identify as whatever you want to identify as. It was JFK who said, Ich bin ein Berliner. He messed up the language, but what he accidentally said was, I am a jelly donut. You could be a jelly donut if you want to be. If you believe in it enough, you put it on the menu and that this is a wing, guess what? It's a wing. Who am I to argue?
You know what a wing is? An actual wing. Boneless wings are not wings.
When does reality matter anymore?
Wings, they'd be wings. I feel like we're just in an alternate universe where we have no idea what wings are. Like I'm actually I identify as a cat. I just want everybody to know I'm meowing. I'm not speaking English. But listen, boneless wings are not wings because if they were, they would be called wings. Boneless wings are adult nuggets. They are nubs. They are linugs, as we called them earlier. If you want to dress them up, but they are not wings. They can be anything they want except wings.
To recap our 5 o'clock fight, round number 1, you're at a restaurant, but you're not hungry enough to finish the entire meal. Do you take it home as leftovers or push through and finish it? I say push through and finish it because it's always going to downgrade the second time you heat it up. Carlos said he is the king of taking home leftovers. Round 2, what is the better sports date? A round of golf or taking in a baseball game? Carlos says golf because he wants to get all handsy and show her how to hold the club. I say go to baseball. There's not as much pressure to perform and be good at something. You're just there taking it in, watching. Round number 3, are boneless wings wings? I say, yeah, you have to respect the poultry's pronouns. I say if it says wings on the menu, it is a wing. Carlos says, hell no. If it's not attached to the side of the bird and flaps and does this thing, it ain't a wing. What do you think? Text in 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Tell us who won each round of the 5 o'clock fight, and I'll tell you right now how you can suggest a 5 o'clock fight.
What do you want Diesel and Co Bryson to fight about next?
If you've got an ass, I'll kick it.
Submit your topics to Diesel at thefanupstate.com. Subject line fight on the Fan Upstate.
Man, these messages are coming in fast and furious on the stream. How about this? We'll start there and see if we can pick this up where these things started. Madcraft says, cracking skulls. Carlos with the boxing moves. He was appreciating that. Let's see. Here we go. Zenny says, take it home. Talking about the food. Take the second meal home.
Yeah.
He says, my two boys will eat anything. They're 18 and 10. Yeah, they will eat anything at that age. Let's see here. She also says, take your lady to golf. So she's already given you the win right there. Am I picking up anything from Zenny? Am I picking up the boneless wings argument? Let's see. She says, yes, they're boneless with the skeletons gone. They are wings with the skeletons gone. Okay, I'll take that. Let's see if we can catch back up here. We have Madcraft saying, side question, if you're good at golf, do you just absolutely spank her or do you tune it back so that she feels good?
Ooh, let me feel that one.
That's a great one.
You got to cater it to your date. You got to know who you're taking out. If you know it's somebody that's competitive, tune it back. I don't want to say let her win, but tune it back. Make it feel like that if she lost, that it was that you had to work for it. But
wouldn't you make her feel bad by if she knows that you're taking it easy on her? Wouldn't that be more embarrassing to know somebody sucked intentionally? So that I didn't feel bad?
If she's not competitive, you wax that ass. You show no remorse because then you put your foot down like, I'm the alpha. Yeah, look at me. I'm the captain.
That's how I feel when I take Ashley to Top Golf because I kick her ass at Top Golf. And I feel bad because I'm like, this isn't even a competitive game. What's going on here? Let's see here. Let's see. Shane Barrett says Carlos wins round 1. Diesel wins round 2 and 3. He says, I'm shocked Diesel didn't call boneless wings saucy nugs.
I take issue with that, Shane. You typed that out before Diesel even finished his third round argument.
JB says Carlos wins round 1. Diesel wins round 2 and 3. Thank you, JB. He says boneless wings are called slap nugs. I've never heard that, JB. I've never heard of slap nugs. Did you come up with that? Let's see here.
Is it because they taste so good makes you want to slap your mama?
Shane Barrett says, I don't have to suck intentionally at golf. I guess he just sucks naturally at golf. Let's see. Zenny says it's a chance for both of you to have fun and not have expectations. Just have fun until later, then beat her at sports. LOL. Thank you, Zenny, for the text there. She does. She does. Let's see here. Texter says, this goes back to our conversation earlier about Kirby Smart. Want to get to this quickly. He says, I was 17 when I went to college on scholarship. I can't imagine what would have happened if you would have put $250,000 in my pocket, being honest. That's true, Texter. Yeah. You're putting a lot more pressure on these athletes to behave with some class and to behave with some, like they've been here before. But the thing is, I'm now putting $250,000 in your pocket. I expect you to be more mature, right? I'm not putting $250K in your pocket so you can go out there and be immature and blow it all. I'm putting $250K in your pocket because I expect you to be mature.
Yeah, I don't know about that. You're asking kids that, presumably haven't had this kind of money growing up.
No, I'm with you on that.
Once you get this kind of money, like, you don't know what to do with it. So, like, yes, they are young men. They are young men. They are adults at this point, over 18. You can go serve. There are, privileges afforded to you. But I'm not going to fault somebody for making kind of foolish decisions with money because I knew when I got my first taste of pay, I didn't know what to do. I was over here blowing it on things that I can't talk about on this stream or on this air. I will talk to you about that offline. But yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be better financial education for not only our student athletes, but for just really anybody growing up overall. We really got to sit down and be like, hey, this is how you handle obscene amounts of money.
Okay, first of all, these are 18-year-old men now at this point. I hate when people call them kids. We're putting big boy money in their pockets. I expect them to act like big boys, right? They sign contracts Carlos. I know this is not the 5 o'clock fight. We're getting into a new fight right here that we didn't expect to have. They signed contracts. They read the contracts. They should understand the contracts. They should understand the ramifications for their actions. You do something stupid with the money that we provided to you, it's going bye-bye, okay? We're going to take it all right back. So I expect you to behave like an adult. And how do we know that these programs don't have financial literacy programs and training for these players? It's not like they just put $250K in their pocket and wish them the best of luck. They put this money in their pockets and they try to educate them on the right things that they're supposed to do. These programs all sit these players down and try to teach them the right things to do with their money and with their lives. Some of them just don't listen. Okay. Do you want to respond to that, or should I continue on with 5 o'clock fight?
Nah, I'll respond later. I don't think we disagree too much on those parts.
Let's see. Carlos wins, says a texter. Diesel won round 1 because Carlos said microwave. Carlos wins round 2 because of golf. And Carlos wins round 3. Texter says Carlos wins 2-1. He wins 1 and 3. Diesel wins round 2. Diesel, you lost me at having to respect Wings pronouns.
Yeah, imagine going on a Boneless Wings like Tinder profile and it says they and them. No, be a wing.
Texas Action Jackson says Diesel wins rounds 1 and 2. Carlos wins round 3. Bobby gives me the clean sweep. And then he says, oh yeah, Carlos, you and JD need to talk off air about blowing the money. He wants to find out. He wants to know the story about Carlos with a K blowing his first taste of big money.
There is a club in Atlantic City, New Jersey, I am not allowed back into.
Yeah, did she have sparkles on her skin? Did she smell like bubble gum? What happened?
I can't tell you how you. Oh no, I can't say that one. I almost walked into that. I'm saying I can't tell you anything else smell, but I can tell you about another sense. By the way,
you tell me that the body oil with glitter in it didn't cover up that smell?
By the way, Madcraft says that you're salty in the stream here because you didn't read his decision. Carlos round 1, Carlos round 2, Diesel round 3. I don't want to feel like an ass leaving a restaurant. I can get more intimate on a golf date, and wing meat is wing meat. So don't be salty. Go check your sodium levels, Diesel. Read everybody. You look like the little girl in the Morton Salt with the yellow umbrella. With all that salt.
That's because I only consume sea salt from the sea, my friend. I consume fancy salt, not that salt
you're
of the
getting
plebs.
That host money, that's why.
Exactly. When we come back, another big question from Carlos with a K that's going to put a lot of you Tolos in a tight spot. That's coming up next on the Fan Upstate. Working through show number 87, Wire to Wire, with Diesel and Cole Bryson. Cole Bryson out of the country. So we're joined now by Carlos Ortiz, coming out of Queens, New York. Appreciate you jumping in on the show today. It's been a blast.
Yeah, man, always. You ask, I deliver. All right, I'll be here.
I'm gonna call you Uber Eats. I ask, you deliver.
If they're not sponsoring the show, we don't give them any free promo. All right.
JB, we were talking earlier about Georgia players and a lot of these players who have problems keeping it in the lanes. How about that? I was going to say keeping it in their pants, but that sounds bad. Keeping it between the lines out on the tarmac. JB says that's the price you pay to have elite players come to your school. Give them millions of dollars and a shiny new fast car and say, have at it, boys. Y'all are Georgia football players, not pissant college students. Pillage at your own free accord. Is that really where we are? Are we going to say, hey, go do what you want to do? Because if we don't let you do what you want to do, even if it's illegal, you're going to go somewhere else. Like, is that where college football is now?
Yeah, unfortunately it is. I mean, when you have options, you're going to look for the best one that's right for you. So if someone's going to let you get away with murder, I mean, I hate to say it like that, but if someone's going to let you get away with whatever you want to do and give you the most amount of money, and someone else is just going to, kind of be a Debbie Downer or Sad Sally and restrict what you want to do, then you're going to go for the bag. So that's where we are. This is what happens when you introduce, gobs of money and boosters and NIL and legal funding. This is what happens. You get the Wild Wild West. Now they're mercenaries at this point.
He says next thing you'll see is Paul Wrecking Crew coming out to play quarterback for the UGA Dogs. Well, here's the thing, JB. You put millions of dollars in a fast car in their hands. You might not have Paul Crew. You might have Paul Walker. And you won't have a quarterback anymore. I know it's not. Is it too soon? Is it too soon to crack jokes about Paul Walker?
No, he's left us a while back. I think the statute of limitations has passed.
What did he call him? What was his nickname in that movie? Not the name of the character, but what did Vin Diesel call him?
Oh, I don't remember.
Like white bread or something like that. I don't remember what the nickname was there. But you ask a very interesting question here, and I want to let you set it up.
Sure. All right. So this is coming off the heels of yesterday. Jerry Jones spoke to the Dallas media. One of the more infamous quotes that he said this offseason is that he and the Cowboys were going to be all in. Well, they haven't really had an offseason that reflects those all-in comments. The big move that they've made so far is bringing back Ezekiel Elliott from the New England Patriots back to be the running back for the Cowboys. They've lost more people than they've brought in. They lost 2 offensive lineman starters. Michael Gallup went for the Raiders a year before that. They lost a bunch of pieces. All in all, Jerry Jones, while he's getting up there in age, he does care. He hasn't won anything since the 90s. He's one of the few owners that's actually the general manager of their respective organization. So he does make football decisions. He's been involved with the game for really since 81. I mean, I think the Cowboys have only had 2 general managers in their history, and he's one of them. So I wanted to present this question because Cowboy fans are really getting sick and tired of not being relevant. Not forget about winning. They haven't gone to an NFC championship game since, I believe, 98. So I present this question to you all here, especially those who are Panthers fans. Dave Tepper did not have a good season last year. He was getting sensitive, stopping off at a restaurant because he didn't like the sign that they had out front. He was throwing drinks at fans. His wife is in the scouting department. He hasn't really looked good since he's come over and bought the Panthers, but he's got oodles of money. So I'm going to present this option to you, Diesel, first, and then we'll open it up to everybody else if you want to chime in on the text line or if you want to give us a call. We're going to do an NFL trade for owners. David Tepper is going to be traded. He will no longer be the owner of the Panthers.
Oh, thank God.
However, how these trades work, here are the 3 options that you're going to have. I'm going to give you 1 football option, 1 baseball, 1 basketball. You have to take one of these 3 people. You can either have the aforementioned Jerry Jones. You can have Jerry Reinsdorf, who owns both the Chicago Bulls and the Chicago White Sox. or you can have James Dolan, who owns the Knicks and the Rangers. Here's why I throw these three owners out there. Jerry Jones, we just talked about. He does care, but he hasn't won anything in a long time. Jerry Reinsdorf, he has publicly said he's okay with being mediocre. He's okay with the Bulls being an 8th to 9th seed, just getting into the playoffs and losing. He doesn't necessarily need to spend the money to go and build the championship roster. He's okay just staying afloat. James Dolan, on the other hand, will spend as much money as possible, but will never win. So these are your three options. We're going to get rid of Dave Tepper. Out of those three guys, Diesel, which one's the one that you're going to take back?
Well, the crazy thing about Jerry, it feels obvious to say Jerry Jones here, but I'm going to explain why. James Dolan is an embarrassment to every team that he owns. He hasn't, I would say that he hasn't necessarily been super embarrassing to the Rangers, but as far as his ownership of the Knicks, he has been an embarrassment. He has run afoul of former players. He has, obviously, he's just a bad dude, right? He's just a bad owner, and the fans hate him. The fans chant things like, we don't want you sell the team. And he gets pissed off about it and publicly talks about that. Jerry Reinsdorf, it's weird. As he's gotten older, he's changed. But Jerry Reinsdorf, back in the day, he wanted the Bulls to be a winner. Like, he would spend the money to have the Bulls being a winner. And now it just seems like he's a businessman. All he cares about is making the money. He doesn't care if his team wins or not. So that for those reasons, Jerry Jones is the obvious choice. Now, the biggest downside to Jerry Jones is that he is just far too loyal to people within his organization that he feels are right for his organization. We've seen it with coaches. We've seen it with multiple quarterbacks. We've seen him, put his arm around somebody, and hey, it's great for that quarterback, right? It's great to have that kind of longevity and that kind of job security. Dak Prescott has gotten the Cowboys to a good point, but he hadn't gotten over that hump. A smart owner would say, okay, let's go draft a quarterback who can get us above and beyond where Dak Prescott did, but he won't do that because he's loyal to Dak Prescott. So I want a guy who at least wants to win, a guy who is trying to win, even though it's frustrating. He actually has a winning team under his belt. So I don't think there's any reason why you could say either of those other two guys.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I hear the comment. I hear the case that you're making for Jerry Jones. I'm actually going to go off a little bit of a curveball here. I'll take James Dolan. James Dolan, and I'll make this very direct. James Dolan is a jerk. And this is not me just pontificating off the top of my head. This is from interactions that I've had with him. This is interactions from people that I know that had it with him. James Dolan is an absolute jackwagon. He's also a man-child. The dude fancies himself as this great musician. I don't know if
band's not bad. His band's not bad. I've looked it up. It's not great.
It's also not great. Yeah,
it's not great, but it's not bad. It's not the worst band I've ever heard.
But in terms of James Dolan's fandom and him being an owner of a team, his only crime is that he hasn't won yet. Whereas Jerry Jones, he hasn't won, but he's also way too involved in the football operations. Remember, Jerry Jones is not necessarily a bad drafter, but he's facing a problem with free agency and, really just keeping the roster together. Right now, he's on a last year of Dak Prescott. They cannot franchise tag him. That's been worked into his contract. So they cannot tag him. And he does have a no trade clause. So if the Cowboys were to decide to trade Dak Prescott, whether it's now or a couple weeks into the season, Dak Prescott can dictate where he can go. So Dak Prescott has all the leverage there. CeeDee Lamb wants a new deal. Micah Parsons wants a new deal. You cannot spend 70% of your cap on 3 players. So that's why, he drafted great, but they've also mismanaged moves to put them really in this position that they can't play all 3 guys. And with these 3 guys, they haven't been able to make it to the NFC Championship, let alone the Super Bowl. So Jerry Jones, he cares, but I'd rather have somebody who is going to throw in the money and not necessarily be as involved with the teams. Someone who's just going to be more of a silent owner. James Dolan's not silent. He makes stupid moves, but at least he doesn't do it in affecting the Rangers and the Knicks. Because now you look at the Knicks, they actually are the favorites going into the next NBA season, one of the favorites, I should say, after the Mikal Bridges trade to win the championship. I still think they need another big man. They might need another outside shooter, but that's neither here nor there. Dolan hasn't been an issue the last 2-3 years with the Knicks, and he seems to hardly ever be a problem for the Rangers. The Rangers have been successful in their own right, get into Eastern Conference Finals a couple of times. So I'll take James Dolan if you promise to get rid of Dave Tepper, because you know what? Say what you want about Dolan, he ain't throwing drinks in people's faces.
Dave Tepper wishes he was Jerry Jones. Dave Tepper is trying to follow in Jerry Jones' footsteps as much as he possibly can, being a super rich, super involved owner. The problem is Dave Tepper is a poor man's Jerry Jones. I bring concerts to the city of Charlotte. I'm sure that narrative, that little tagline has come your way. You know what Jerry Jones actually does? He builds brand new stadiums. He gets big events coming to his stadium. I'm talking about wasn't the Tyson Paul fight supposed to be at Jerry World, and it's scheduled to be at Jerry World. So Jerry Jones knows how to actually follow through with all of the things he wants to do. He wants a brand new stadium, he's going to build it. He wants the world's biggest events coming to his stadium, he's going to book it. Dave Tepper can't do that. Dave Tepper couldn't even get Taylor Swift to come to the city of Charlotte. He brags about all these concerts that he's brought. I looked at the schedule of shows that they had coming up a few months ago. They had one concert in the summer of 2024. One. And it was Morgan Wallen, a guy as problematic as it gets, right?
Yeah.
That's him bringing concerts to the city of Charlotte. If you're telling me that as a Carolina Panther fan and somebody who covers the Carolina Panthers and does the pregame show for the Carolina Panthers, you're telling me I get to cover a team that's in the mix for the playoffs every year? I understand that they don't win playoff games. It is what it is. But at least they get to the playoffs. So you've had good season after good season after good season. I'd rather have Jerry Jones, a guy that can actually follow through.
All right, so I guess now we present it to the masses. Your choices are James Dolan, who's the owner of the Knicks and the Rangers, Jerry Reinsdorf, who is the owner of the Bulls and the White Sox, or Jerry Jones, who is the owner of the Cowboys. You're going to get rid of Dave Tepper, but you got to take one of those three. I'd love to hear what everybody's answers could be.
Yeah, I think I think having seats at the top row of the lower bowl in Charlotte, right underneath the owner's box, should come with a free poncho, right? It's like going to a Gallagher show and sitting in the front row. You realize you're going to get splattered by a watermelon, right? So you bring the plastic, you bring the tarp. If you're in Charlotte, top row underneath the owner's box, I'm honestly shocked that we haven't seen fans troll Dave Tepper because they know where his box is. He sits in an open air box. He wants to look out onto the field. I would have the ponchos that troll Dave Tepper with messaging on the back, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'll take it a step further. I actually really want to go down to a Panthers home game, so maybe we all have to make this happen. I would love for Tepper to just punch me in the face. Punch me in the face, and let's see what I can get out of it. Because then, you know what? Maybe I become the owner of the Panthers, and we can get into the playoffs. I mean, that's not a bad deal, right?
If it's me,
just give me the Panthers.
If it's me and a vodka soda gets thrown on the back of my head, I'm saying, oh, it got into my eyes. It stings. It burns. I can't see straight anymore.
Immediately fall to the ground.
I used to have 20/20 vision. Now I've got 20/12 vision. I can't see. I need money. God, who is this idiot who only took what it was fine from the NFL was $300K.
Ugh.
I wonder exactly how much the fan got out of this. I mean, I would hire the sleaziest, dirtiest lawyer I could possibly find. I'd be coming into the courtroom with a neck brace on, sir. Well, you should have seen the size of the ice cube that came out of that cup. It hit me really hard.
3 crutches, like 2 under my arms, a chin crutch, just kind of walking like this. Then like, oh my God, this guy looks terrible. Like, case adjourned. We have to give him whatever he wants.
Madcraft says the thing about Jerry is even though they haven't made an NFC championship, the Cowboys have fielded decent teams that were capable. He also doesn't throw drinks or kick people out of arenas forever. Talking about James Dolan there.
James Dolan does do that. That man is very petty. Facial recognition software is real.
Yep. I always wonder how they do that. I mean, like, do you really think some old lady? Do you think Edna's going to stop somebody from coming in to the Knicks stadium? No, she's not.
Yeah, but my a good buddy of the Infinity Sports Network's morning show, Maggie and Perloff, Maggie Gray is indeed banned from MSG. Maybe it's been lifted, but as far as I know, no. So James Dolan really does know how to hold a grudge.
Let's see here. That's it. You guys, if you want to get in the comment section, let us know, who would you take? I'm going Jerry Jones. If I could trade Dave Tepper as owner of the Carolina Panthers, I'm trading him for Jerry Jones. Carlos is trading him for James Dolan because he'll spend a lot of money and he actually can get teams into a position to win, even though he is a massive tool. When we come back, we'll read your messages and we'll get to our daily wires, a refresher, an update on our daily wires. That's coming up next on the Fan Upstate. Wire to Wire on the Fan Up State. Getting you caught up with what's going on out in the sports world. We call these our daily wires. This is
Buzz.
there it is. There it is. Getting quicker. We'll get one of these eventually. The Olympic ceremonies are underway. French metal band Gojira played the rainy event. It looked nasty out there, man. I would not want to be on a poo-smelling river in the heavy rain, just churning up all that nastiness. That's just gross. But, man, it was badass to see Gojira playing this event. It really was. Tua Tagovailoa got his bag, 4 years, $212.4 million. That is officially the richest deal in Miami Dolphins team history. Do you think it's smart to put that kind of money out there for a dude that is injury prone, that's had multiple concussions?
No, but you had no choice, and just like
That's
the Jaguars didn't have a choice to pay Trevor Lawrence, he has the highest at $55 million, along with Joe Burrow. So Tua is now third among the league's highest paid quarterbacks. I understand paying him because I really think that he is the right quarterback for that system. He does exactly what Mike McDaniel wants to do, and that's really get the D ball out. You know, the Dolphins have track stars for offensive weapons, so Tua does fit into that well. It's just, keeping him on the field. You know, I remember he was learning jujitsu like a year ago, putting on weight, taking off weight, taking Ozempic. Like, you know, Tua has done everything he can to try to stay into football shape. 17-game schedule is not going to be his friend. It's going to be worse when we eventually get to 18. But they had to pay him because what was your alternative going to be? And this is why I think Dak Prescott's going to even get a bigger contract. And also Jordan Love from Green Bay. Jordan Love might reset the market. Diesel is going to get to a point that these quarterback contracts, they're already slightly getting out of control, but it's going to get to a point where they might have to have a separate salary cap just for quarterbacks because they're starting to make way too much money to build a functional team around them.
Yeah, I remember when that rumor came down, that supposition came down that they were going to have a separate salary cap for quarterbacks. I mean, we see the salary cap go up year in and year out, but you're right; these contracts are so out of whack, and you can't be the one to reset the market downwards, right? Teams don't really get to set the market; players are setting the market. Speaking of market, there's a lot of stuff going on in Major League Baseball free agency. The Seattle Mariners acquired all-star outfielder Randy Arozarena from the Tampa Bay Rays. Tampa Bay Rays also now send Zach Eflin to the Baltimore Orioles.
Wow, that's a good deal.
You asked how they were going to fleece the Orioles. Were they going to get 3 minor leaguers out of the deal?
That's a really good deal for the Orioles. I also saw they made a deal with the Phillies as well. I believe Austin Hayes is on to Philadelphia. But yeah, look, that's bad news for Braves fans because Zach Eflin, that was a pitcher that they were targeting. So now they got to pivot. I mean, we're not there yet, but it's getting late early. The trade deadline is around the corner on Tuesday. So if you're a Braves fan, you might want to start getting a little bit nervous to see if Double-A hasn't worked all his magic yet because the potential trade partners are getting smaller and smaller. Hey, I mentioned San Francisco. If you want to bat, Michael Conforto can be had. If you want a pitcher, Blake Snell can help you out with the starting rotation. But you got to start making moves now because just because the deadline is Tuesday doesn't mean that you can't make moves now.
Russell Westbrook, as expected, signed a deal with the Denver Nuggets, 2 years, $6.8 million. If I remember correctly off the top of my head, this makes like the 7th team Russell Westbrook has been on. He is a journeyman all over the league.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that a guy his age with his reputation is really going to be what it takes to push the Nuggets over the top in the West.
He doesn't really have to be. I mean, he'll be a backup option because they'll still have, as long as Jamal or Murray is healthy, they'll be okay. This will be his 6th team. He's with Oklahoma. Obviously, he got drafted with there, and where I can't believe that Thunder team had 3 MVPs on their roster with James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and Kevin Durant, and they couldn't figure out a way to put it together. He went to the Rockets, the Wizards. The Wizards was as an
not Kevin Durant's fault.
No.
It's certainly not his fault.
Lakers and Clippers, so now it makes Nuggets. I think this is a good situation for him, though, if he wants to win. You don't got to go in there and beat a guy. You're still with one of the best players on the planet with Nikola Jokic. I don't think they're going to be expecting too much, and Mike Malone's a really good coach. I think they'll find a way to figure it out. Westbrook has a little bit of juice left, but yeah, he's no longer the triple-double MVP machine that he used to be, and that's okay. I don't think they need him to be.
This just in, Warner Brothers Discovery is suing the NBA for breach of contract after the NBA declined its offer to continue its media rights deal and instead signing with Amazon. Georgia senior wide receiver Ra Thomas was arrested early Friday morning on multiple domestic violence charges, including family violence. He is still in jail. Canadian Olympic Committee CEO David Shoemaker said that new information comes out and suggests that Canadian coach Bev Priestman knew all about the drone that the Canadian team was using to spy on New Zealand's practice. Unfortunately, it didn't help them because they still won.
Yeah, I mean, of course they knew. Like, head coaches, we talked about this with Kirby Smart earlier. All head coaches know exactly what happens with their program. Nothing goes by without their at least a little bit of a heads up. So good for Canada to fire them and get rid of those boneheads that were trying to cheat with the world watching. It's the Olympics on a global scale. Good for them. But yeah, this was absolutely a stupid thing because you were going to beat New Zealand anyway.
Vandals hit Paris's high-speed rail lines with arson and vandalism ahead of these opening ceremonies today. It paused travel into the city before the opening ceremonies. There were no known injuries, so good thing there. But a little bit of maybe a little homegrown domestic terrorism protesting these Olympic Games. We're 29 days away from ACC football, 34 days from SEC football. And last note for you: South Carolina will start their training camp next Friday. Those are your daily wires. When we come back, we're going to bring you back into the conversation that we had earlier with Shane Connick of the Charlotte Observer. Fantastic conversation with him. And if you missed it, you're going to hear it again next. Coming off the Brickyard 400, one of the most exciting races in NASCAR. I love it. I love odd-shaped tracks that make these guys think just a little bit. We go to the phone lines now. Shane Connick, who writes about NASCAR for the Charlotte Observer. Make sure you look him up and find his content at Shane_Connick on Twitter. Shane, you called the ending to the Brickyard 400 ridiculous. I say that a lot about NASCAR is ridiculous these days. Explain to me what got you so up in arms about the ending of the Brickyard 400.
Well, like you just said, the Brickyard 400 is always a great race. Indianapolis Motor Speedway always produces good races, but this is a race that did not feature any on-track passing. This is a race that ended up going to overtime, ended up having Kyle Larson win. But the reality is that when the 41 car of Ryan Preece went around, it couldn't move. It was obvious to everybody there. And any other scenario, whenever you see a car end up off the track in any situation, whether they move the car immediately or not, they wave the yellow flag. And that's especially been the precedent in overtime. But this time, Kyle Larson's in the lead. They wait. Elton Sawyer explained earlier this week on Sirius XM, they thought that Preece would be able to just keep going, but then as soon as he moved it a little bit, they realized he couldn't. At that point, Larson had just taken the white flag, and they called the caution that they seemingly could have for every other reason that they would have called it on any other lap, thrown that yellow flag just before Larson took the white flag. So in the end of the day, though, to your point, it's a great race. Kyle Larson won, and a few weeks ago, we had a race in Nashville go about 5 overtimes, and Joey Logano ended up winning. And I don't think anybody felt that that was a legitimate reflection of the entire race. This race, in a lot of ways, at Indianapolis was the ultimate kind of assessment of strong drivers in a lot of ways. The top 5 cars in the points qualified in the top 5 starting positions and ran in the front throughout the race. And Kyle Larson, arguably the greatest driver in the sport right now, won it with Tyler Reddick, probably arguably one of the fastest Toyotas, finished in second. So it really ended up being a strong race, but still, if you're going by the rules, which we go, or you're going by what seems to happen every other week, the caution would have been thrown, and Larson still could have won it on the 3rd overtime, but maybe you run into a national situation. But either way, a good race and a Kyle Larson victory.
Oh, Shane, what's going on? It's Carlos. First of all, thanks for following me on Twitter. So not only are you a friend of the show, but you're a friend of me, so I appreciate that. But you know, one of the calls that, one of the drivers that was impacted by that call with Larson winning was Ryan Blaney. But it looks like he's going to be okay. We haven't had a back-to-back winner of a Cup Series championship since Jimmy Johnson won 5 straight back in 06 to 2010. Blaney looks like he's the closest to do it right now, despite the finish at the Brickyard. How much of a chance do you give him to defend the title and possibly go back-to-back here?
Yeah, Carlos, great to talk with you as well. And I see you got the WFAN in your profile pic there. I've listened to a lot of WFAN in my life as well. Now, Ryan Blaney has a legitimate shot to go back-to-back. Last year, it didn't necessarily feel all year like he would be the guy who would be representing the sport as its champion by the end of the season, but he won the Coca-Cola 600 to snap a long winless streak, and then from there, that catapulted him into the playoffs, and then he got wins and top 10 finishes when he needed to as the playoffs went on and ended up winning the championship, and now this year has noted that he's had a bit of a changed mindset, because before, especially when he had that winless streak, he felt he was really just doing everything in his power to win a race. At that point, he's approaching 30 years old. He's been in the sport a while. Now he's a champion. He's realized that it's not as important to shoot for first place in every single race at a certain point. And he's been able to put together a lot of strong finishes this year. And now, guess what? He has 2 wins to his name when most drivers have 1, or most of them have none. The ones who do have 1, he has 3, and now Larson with 4. So Ryan Blaney has become one of the best drivers in the sport this year, a year after he made his way to the championship. So Ryan Blaney has just as much of a chance as he had last year to repeat, and the 12 car has been fast.
Shane Connick of the Charlotte Observer joining us here on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Carlos with a K. I saw on your Twitter, Shane, about Rangers parking being $165. First of all, tell me you did not pull into that parking garage.
Oh,
Second of
no.
all, tell me if you did, the Charlotte Observer got you back on that one. And third, what is the most surprisingly unreasonable charge you've seen at a NASCAR event?
So I was in Arlington for the American Athletic Conference football media days. And fortunately, I did not have a rental car, but I was just walking around, checking out Globe Life Field, AT&T Stadium, that area. And there's a garage. And typically the highest prices you see, sometimes it's $50 in certain places, or typically even 25 certain cities. And all of a sudden in the middle of Arlington, Texas, it's just not 100. It's just 165. And it very clearly says for that one particular event, that night's Rangers game. I have never seen a price anywhere that's been that high. At NASCAR, I would say it doesn't seem like they have that crazy prices, to be honest. And I was actually talking to Cole about this, here from a fan perspective a bit, about rules about stuff you're allowed to take in with you compared to other sporting events. But either way, it just has to be typical stadium concession type prices. And something to note about NASCAR, that I can't think of any super outlandish prices off the top of my head. And for most sporting events, you could think of many.
Shane, I know with baseball, and you being a baseball fan, you know about this as well. You know, a lot of these stadiums will have their really over-the-top priced concession item that's more of just marketing online. You know, there will be the $500 Wagyu burger I think they sell at Truist Park in Atlanta. I mean, have we seen NASCAR tracks getting in on that, where Daytona will try to come up with something unique to put on their menu, and Nashville will put something very unique on their menu? Have we seen that at all in NASCAR?
We've started to see tracks create atmospheres, and I think it relates even to the bigger concept that you see these new stadiums be built, or stadiums that exist, and they want to build a whole entertainment district around that stadium, kind of like what Atlanta's really done around Truist Park. And so with these racetracks, they want to make the infield not like, oh, you walk around and you do get the whole garage and experience, but that you have restaurants and little clubs. And in Phoenix, you see different restaurants that fit the culture, have different. At Daytona, you have a lot of different bars like that as well. And it just is a different vibe at different tracks, I feel like. And the Phoenixes and the Daytonas, they clearly want to have that slightly newer, big event kind of feel. Charlotte in some ways as well. And then other tracks, you go to Martinsville and it's just a lot more. You walk around the infield and there's just not as much space. And they want it to be that the only food you're for the most part getting is that hot dog stand right in the middle of Martinsville Speedway, where you can get a all the way, as they call it, filled hot dog for $1 or $2 or whatever it is.
Can you tell us why Corey LaJoie and Spire Motorsports are calling it quits after a 4-year relationship?
Yeah, I know. Well, not entirely. All we know is that Corey LaJoie announced that he will not be returning to the 7 cars, told The Athletic first. And it comes as Corey LaJoie has found himself in the news a lot these past few weeks, and we've talked about it. And like we talked about last week, Kyle Busch let the Pat McAfee show know about the beef that they've had. And LaJoie, the interesting part of this is that Rodney Childers, he's a known crew chief. He was at the top of the pit box for the number 4 Ford of Kevin Harvick for years. Has been with Josh Berry this past year. Respected crew chief, and now with Stewart Haas Racing closing its doors following this season, Childers had announced that he was going to be going to Spire Motorsports to crew chief the 7, and there was no reason to assume that would not be working with Corey LaJoie, considering that the driver is just slightly younger than 30, believe, and he's been in the sport for a while. He's put together strong runs. He's developing. Spire's been an innovative kind of team as it merged with Kyle Busch Motorsports last year. But now with this news, we don't know exactly what's going to be happening with Corey LaJoie, because it had been widely expected that he would be returning to the 7 car with a new and enhanced team. So this is an interesting news that was pretty unexpected, I think, within a lot of these team changes that go on this time of year.
Yeah, with LaJoie leaving, are you hearing any of the rumors of his replacement? And you mentioned Kyle Busch. He might be one of the names to watch out for. Who do you got a good feel that could be in the run-in to fill that spot for Spire next year?
It seems like Kyle Busch will, in fact, be returning to RCR. Do feel like Kyle Busch, a lot of people feel like if he were in a different car with a different team, maybe he'd have some better results. Either way, he is committed to working with Childress. They plan on potentially even bringing on another charter. But with Michael McDowell now joining Spire Motorsports, it seems like he will be in the 71, believe not necessarily the 7. I think if they don't end up moving Michael McDowell to the 7, wouldn't be surprised if Spire even goes after a Todd Gilliland kind of driver. And somebody who's been putting together strong runs, finds himself toward the front different points in races, and maybe just needs a slightly better ride.
Shane Connick, the Charlotte Observer, joining us here on the Fan Upstate. There's been a lot of upheaval with drivers moving around teams this year. A lot of crazy stuff has happened on the track as well. So far, and I realize that we still have a little bit of time left in this season, including the playoffs. What moment do you think will be talked about for the longest time coming out of this season?
Right now, it's the fight that went down at North Wilkesboro. We've had our share of big moments this year, but that felt like as big of a storyline as you're going to get. And it also really helps that was in the All-Star race, when the winner of the race did not earn any points and in a lot of ways was inconsequential compared to every other race, where the winner of that race is a big story in and of itself outside of whatever side story breaks out. That was a fight like that has not happened in the sport in a while. And the fact that got to take center stage and make its way to the national outlets that it did as quickly as it did, yeah, it's a fight and all that. But you had the feud of Stenhouse getting into with Busch and everything that transpired after that. That has been the most memorable moment of this season for everybody.
Now, if going back to the playoff standings here, there are over a dozen drivers I think are facing must-wins. That they got to be able to get one in the book so to keep their playoff chances alive. So, like, I'm looking at guys like Kyle Busch, Michael McDowell, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Chase Briscoe. The list can go on. I think there's at least 15 guys that got to get a win in there. Who of those names, or maybe who's someone I haven't mentioned, who do you think has the most realistic shot to make the playoffs?
So at this point, Kyle Busch has just got to win already, and I think it's going to happen. I heard you say his name a bunch of times in there, and I think we're all thinking that. Kyle Busch, even though he's in that 8 car this year, and he was running in 6 toward the end when he spun and ended up prompting overtime in Indianapolis. It's a matter of time before he wins, and especially we head to Richmond in a couple of weeks, the first race after the Olympic break. That could be a good time for Rowdy to return to victory lane in a cup car. And at that point, he's in the playoffs, and that's all he needs to get to. So, yes, I think it's most important for a guy like Busch. And at this point, that Michael McDowell, guys like that haven't won. We've had the Austin Cindrics of the world end up getting wins and getting into the playoffs. It's about time that Kyle Busch gets the win that he needs to get in.
Shane, we spent a lot of time on these airwaves having you on talking about our love for small tracks. I think you, Cole, and I all have that in common. I grew up in Hickory where, they would host a Busch race every couple of years at Hickory Motor Speedway. The wall to pits even says birthplace of the NASCAR stars on it. I love big tracks. They're fun. But when it comes to track design, why is it that we aren't seeing NASCAR really go bigger than what we've seen? I'm thinking like bigger than Talladega or smaller than Bristol. Like, why are we not getting weird with some of these designs? I mean, if we're trying to attract a younger and younger audience, why not just make it Fortnite in real life and these guys are out there racing on some really odd shaped tracks?
Well, in terms of it being smaller, with the Clash, before the season starts in February 4th, around that time, they had at the Los Angeles Coliseum the past few years, they have a track that is smaller than Bristol and Martinsville and all of them. And they were going about 50 or 60 miles an hour in circles, and Denny Hamlin won the thing, and it wasn't even a race. But that's as creative as they've gotten in terms of making it that much smaller, and I don't think the popularity worked at all for a non-points paying race in the middle of Los Angeles, and they think it's a big venue and all that, and doesn't seem to really attract the viewers or the fans out there, and just the way they kind of have anticipated the Clash at the LA Coliseum would. But in terms of having something that's bigger than a Talladega, bigger than 2.5 miles, I think about that sometimes, because when they have these road courses, what if they just had drivers actually drive on roads? What if they actually had drivers drive for miles and make some kinds of pit stops in some ways and really got creative like that, considering that these are just supposed to be stock cars racing, that this started from running away from cops hauling moonshine and racing up and down the beach and the highway in Daytona. I think it's a matter of time before, especially with the street courses that they've incorporated with Chicago and other motorsports series have incorporated in other cities, that NASCAR gets even more creative than a big 2.5 mile track to do something even bigger. And I'm not even talking about what we've always been talking about in just these races on city streets.
Yeah, Shane, it feels like they could make, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit come to life, right? And take this thing back to its roots. Go to the hills of North Carolina, paint one of the stock cars like a cop car, and paint one of them like whatever driver wants to do it. I understand it's probably dangerous to try to force a wreck or force somebody to spin somebody out. But, man, that would be entertaining. I would watch that, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I thought that something like that is exactly what NASCAR needs to eventually figure out how to do. And the fact they figured out how to bring these cup cars to downtown Chicago, this should be a walk in the park.
He is Shane Connick, writes about NASCAR for the Charlotte Observer, has a fantastic Twitter page as well. You should go find him at Shane_Connick. We appreciate your time here today, bud. Thank you much. Have a good weekend.
Shane, take it easy, buddy.
You guys as well. Great talk with you guys, Carlos and Diesel.
Thank you, Shane. That is Shane Connick of the Charlotte Observer. Carlos, for a guy that doesn't follow NASCAR very closely, some good questions there, man. You got some good answers out of Shane.
I am a professional, damn it. All right. It's my job to bring questions and answers to the masses. I should have asked him what could get me a filthy casual. If you even want to label me that much into when it comes to NASCAR, what could get me into a race? Damn it. I'll ask him on Twitter, and next time I'm on with you guys, I'll share that answer.
There used to be a string of commercials that aired on ESPN called Never Graduate. I don't know if you remember those, Carlos. There was one in particular. A guy and a girl were out on a date, looked like a blind date. They were driving somewhere. They were in a car together. And they start chit-chatting about college. Where'd you go to school? Oh, I went to Ohio State. She's like, oh, I went to Michigan. And he opens up the car door of a moving car, jumps out, does the roll, sits up on the street and yells, "Go Buckeyes!" And she just pulls away, leaves his ass behind. Never graduate. That's how I feel about things. You ask a very interesting question here on Wire to Wire.
Mm-hmm.
Do you carry college grudges over into the pros? And the answer is hell yeah, you do. Hell
Okay.
yeah, you carry college grudges over. I mean, I'm just trying to think. First of all, my team's rival, Georgia Southern, doesn't have enough good players coming out of it to even make it an issue, right? No Georgia Southern players really make it in the NFL. They don't make it to the Carolina Panthers, so it's not really a problem that I've had to deal with in my lifetime. But you bet your ass I would hold that grudge.
Yeah, I've always found that fascinating, being a guy that is surrounded by pro teams, not necessarily a big college atmosphere over here. I mean, it is New York City. They do take their college basketball serious. There is St. John's, which is right in my neck of the woods in Queens. Rutgers football and basketball is not too far off, but that's, we're talking about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from New York City. That's more of a Jersey thing. Seton Hall's in the area. So yeah, there is some college landscape here, but nothing really of that magnitude of what you have down here in the upstate with Clemson and South Carolina football, because, our college football over here is not great. I mean, Syracuse is almost might as well be another world. It's like Canada South. So I've always been curious about that, to see how those rivalries carry over. Now, I guess I'm curious if you're a fan of a particular pro team. All right, I'm a Giants fan. I think everybody seems to know that about me. If there is a Clemson player and you are a Clemson fan that goes in a Clemson fan, and a Clemson player goes to the Giants, but you're a Bills fan, where does the allegiances lie there? Do you still go with your college allegiances and root on for this player to do well, or do you say, no, I'm a Bills fan, this guy went to the Giants, screw that guy? I'm wondering, how do pro and college fandoms intersect with one another?
Well, when you're talking about pros, they're not choosing where they go, right? These guys are getting drafted by their pro team. So it's not necessarily their choice to go to your rival team. It just happens, right? They're the ones who picked, and you feel happy for the guy. You don't have to necessarily, become a fan of that team because one of your favorite college players is now on that roster, but you can quietly root for him. I think that's okay. I don't think that's against the rules, right?
Maybe, yeah, I guess, because it's funny. I went to a Houston Texans home game the Giants were the road team. I went a couple of years ago at NRG Stadium with a good buddy of mine, and the Giants had a miserable season that year, but I think it was week 4, and it was one of the few games that year that they won. I think they went 5-11. This is before it was a 17-game schedule, and Landon Collins had made an interception on that game. It escapes me who the quarterback was at the time, but Landon Collins, went to Alabama. So when he makes the pick, my buddy and I go, yeah, we like scream and like, get all excited because the Giants get the ball back. And there's a woman that's sitting in front of me, and she turns around and she's like, now, normally I would tell y'all to pipe down, but Landon Collins went to Alabama, roll Tide. So, so she's always stuck out with me. It's always the funniest thing. I'm like, how do these things intersect? But
it is a tangled.
Right. You don't get to pick where they go, right?
Yeah, it's a tangled web, obviously, with players. If you were on my team and then you transferred to my rival, you're dead to me. And we're talking about college football. So like, let's just say, because there was a time there, Carlos, where it felt like there were 3 or 4 different stories about Clemson baseball players leaving Clemson and transferring to South Carolina. And that it's a no-no, right? You just don't do it. I understand it's the modern age of college athletics where the players, they don't care about your school the way you care about your school. Some of them do, but most don't. Like, they're not choosing where they go because of a deep emotional connection that they plan to hold with them for the rest of their lives. They choose to go to the place that's going to give them the best opportunity to play, and right now that's going to probably pay them the most NIL money. Otherwise, they're open to the highest bidder. They may form a little bit of a connection. They may love the place that they went, but ultimately, if another opportunity comes along, a lot of these players they're out the door, right? So even if it means going to your bitter rival. I remember when there were rules against transferring inside your conference. You couldn't do it. Coaches would not release you from your NIL if your plan was to go to another school inside your conference. And now, obviously, you can't do that. The law says you cannot prevent somebody from pursuing their NIL opportunities. So you can't stop them.
Yeah, I mean, what a tangled web we live in. Someone in the chat actually asked me a good question right now, and if you want to jump in, 71307 keyword fan is the call to renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone line, 844 fan phone, which is 844-326-3663. You can call in too. See, Diesel, I can do this job too. Remember when I used to be
remember? Yeah.
Somebody asked me on the text line here, Carlos, as an outsider, what is your view on the Carolina Panthers never taking a Clemson Tiger in the draft? They had their inaugural season in Clemson. That's actually pretty curious because you would see like a lot of pro teams do look at their local college programs to see if there's any late flyers that they could take in the draft. I see it. I saw it with the Giants. They took someone from Rutgers. It was a linebacker in the 6th round a couple of years ago. I'm blanking, so rather than make myself look like a fool and drag everybody's time out, I'll just kind of roll past that. But yeah, I guess Charlotte is 2 hours from you guys. So who would have been the players that the Panthers would have been able to take advantage of anyway? Because I know there's Grady Jarrett is in the NFL. I met a massive man, really big dude. Obviously Trevor Lawrence, but they never would have had the opportunity to pick him because he was the number 1 overall pick. Christian Wilkins, who's now with the Las Vegas Raiders. He went to Miami. I don't think the Panthers could have selected him either. Maybe they might have been able to select him that year in that draft. Deshaun Watson was a player that famously a lot of teams passed up on before the Texans were able to straight up and get him. So yeah, AJ Terrell is another one who is a cornerback for the Falcons. So yeah, there are obviously Clemson players in the NFL. It's a good question. I don't necessarily think I have a problem with it, unless it was a glaring opportunity. I think the closest thing right now would have been passing on Christian Wilkins. I'll have to take a look at that year's draft. I'm going to do that right now, the 2019 NFL draft. Because the Panthers could have used, someone in the defensive front. They always, obviously now that they've traded away Brian Burns, that's certainly an opportunity. I don't necessarily have a problem with it because you want to pick the best player available. And if it winds up being someone from Georgia or someone from Florida, or someone from a rival school in your conference, and you're a fan of the pro team, then to hell with it. You take the best player available. But I do find that fascinating that there are no Tigers on the Panthers roster.
Yeah, for the most part, Carlos, colleges recruit regionally. I mean, there's a reason why most of Georgia's roster comes from the state of Georgia. I mean, there's a handful of guys that come from outside of there because they are in a position now where they can recruit the best of the best. A large part of South Carolina's roster comes from the state of South Carolina. It's because these kids have a reason and a familiarity with these college programs around them. And of course, they have the ability to go make relationships with the high school coaches around them. That's how recruiting works in college. NFL teams, they first of all, they don't recruit, they draft. Second of all, they draft nationally. They're looking for the best player at the position that they need, that also they feel, number one, fits the team's culture, that they think is very good at picking up the concepts that it is that they do, and plays the style of football that they play. So these Clemson fans, y'all got to stop with this. You got to, this is like this slight that they've built up in their heads, that somebody at the Carolina Panthers organization hates us and it's personal. Well, first of all, Jerry Richardson was a Wofford grad. He's got no reason to hate Clemson, okay? He's a Wofford grad. And he put the inaugural season of the team in your stadium. Like, the Carolina Panthers, that would be one of the dumbest things they could possibly do, is waste a draft pick on a guy they don't flat out believe in, just because he's a Clemson Tiger, and it will make Clemson Tiger fans shut up about the why don't they take a Clemson Tiger argument.
Yeah, by the way, Christian Wilkins went number 13 overall to Miami. The Panthers' first pick was 16, so they wouldn't have had an opportunity to pick him up anyway. So I guess puts kibosh on that. But they did pick up Brian Burns in that draft out of Florida State, who is now a New York Giant. So shout out to you guys helping me out.
I remember you texted me the day that happened, and you were like, let's go. We got Burnsy.
we really needed some help, man. Kayvon Thibodeau, he hasn't been what they expected out of Oregon. He has not been that game-wrecking defensive end. So maybe having some, someone to alleviate the pressure on the other side in Burns work out. This is my dog.
I've been watching a little bit of this Giants Hard Knocks.
Yeah,
and
what do you think about that?
Reliving. I haven't watched the whole thing. I'm about 4 episodes deep at this point, but reliving the Brian Burns trade, it's just like digging that knife in all over again. It's like the Panthers, they had him. All they had to do was pay him and make the guy happy. He would have stayed a Panther for life. But you just wasted the opportunity. Sorry about that. I just bit my tongue.
No, you're cool.
You wasted the opportunity to get a lot more for him a year prior.
Yeah,
you sort of dilly-dallied.
Yeah.
This is just emblematic of the Carolina Panthers not having a clue how to deal with contract situations and free agency.
Yeah, that was the criticism I would. Yeah, listen, you got what you got out of the Giants. You got a second and a fifth, and I believe there was a pick swap in there. But you didn't have to pay Burns, which was the crux of the issue anyway. So he gets the big contract from Joe Shane and the Giants. But my criticism is not what you got from the Giants; it's what you passed up from the Rams a year prior. You alluded to. They gave you 2 first-rounders. That was on the table, and they decided not to pull the trigger there. That tells you why Fitterer is no longer the general manager of the team. I mean, that's granted. Those probably would have been mid, first round later or back first round picks. But a first round's a first round, and you had 2 of them on the table. Now you don't even get 1, and you let Burns go out the door. To me, that's just inexcusable when you have a deal in place and you pass it up and you wind up pulling the trigger for something less than.
Yeah, so this texter gets in and says, "Didn't the Panthers bring Ben Boulware in as an undrafted tiny?"
Yeah, no, he was undrafted. So
undrafted guy. I mean, look, it is. I know that Carlos, you not being necessarily the biggest of all college fans and not living in the Southeast where college football is king, you don't understand just how debated and heated everything about the Clemson-South Carolina rivalry is. I mean, everything is a fight. So I get it that Clemson fans are looking at the fact that the Carolina Panthers have brought in now multiple South Carolina Gamecocks onto the roster. Xavier Legette, Justin Horn. There might be a few more in there that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. They're looking at that and saying, well, how come the Carolina Panthers love Gamecocks players? They don't like Clemson players? Look, again, you just talked about Christian Wilkins. He was a great player, a player that the Carolina Panthers probably very well could have used. Like he's a beast, right? But he wasn't available when it came to him in the draft. There's a lot of things that have to happen to get the player that you want. And then to add some arbitrary thing like the Panthers need to take a player from Clemson. Why? There is no reason whatsoever other than to make the soft-ass Clemson fans happy to draft a Clemson Tiger player. If you think he's going to help you, he fits your scheme, you love his attitude, you love his size, you love everything about him. If he's not available by the time he gets to you in the draft, then guess what? You're not taking a Clemson player. So you're not going to reach on a guy that's graded a round or 2 rounds below that just to take a Clemson player. It's enough with this narrative, and it's going to happen eventually. I understand. It's one of those weird idiosyncrasies. It's just kind of happened, but it's not intentional. We got to stop with this idea that there's a slight at hand.
Yeah, I don't think it's a slight at all. But listen, these pro scouts and general managers with their jobs on the line and people getting fired seemingly every 3 years, they don't care if the guy went to Old Dominion. Can you help me win on the professional level? Like you could have went to a Division III school. Can you ball? Can you help our team? Because, if not, then my ass is looking for another team and another job in a couple of years. Speaking of which, you mentioned the Clemson South Carolina rivalry. Last year I didn't make it happen. I flirted with it the year before. What's up with the Palmetto Bowl this year? Can you scoop me a ticket? Any management, you listening? If
we can make it happen.
If I fly down there, what's up? We're going to make this happen in November or what?
If you tell us that you're coming down here, we'll get you a credentialed press pass. We'll get you inside. We'll even feed you lunch. How about that?
I mean, you had me at food. Yeah, I'm circling it right now. November 30th, 2024. I think I can make that happen. I don't work weekends anymore. My sister lives in Charlotte. I've been meaning for a reason to go down there anyway. I think it's finally a time that your boy went down and actually stepped on the upstate grass.
You don't understand. If the upstate finds out that Carlos with a K is making a celebrity appearance at Clemson, South Carolina,
go for us to call me
you're not going to get more than about 10 feet without a hug, a handshake, and a beer being put in your hand, my friend.
And I think the gag was last year that I'm going to come in with a jersey, a custom jersey of half Clemson, half South Carolina, and we'll make the decision there. I wanted to be like my children, fighting for my love. I will be a Clemson or a South Carolina fan at the end of this trip. Which one will it be? Tune in and find out, I guess.
Well, that means you're going to have to come down here twice, Carlos, and you're going to have to get a full-fledged accounting of the Clemson hospitality, which will be this year because the game is in Clemson. And then you got to come the next year to get a full-fledged accounting of the South Carolina hospitality.
I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. I got to think about 2 years in advance.
If you could just stay down here for 2 weeks, maybe we could go back-to-back weeks. 1 week in Columbia, 1 week in Clemson, and then you get to decide. You're not going to be as influenced over the amount of time between your visits. You could knock them out. If you play the cards right, man, you might be able to catch a noon Clemson game and then a night South Carolina game. Get down there, man. I think you can make that happen.
Yeah, I think these are all logistic things that we're going to have to work behind the scenes. But definitely my sister will be excited for me to come down there because I've been needing another excuse to go down there except for her.
Texter says,
but I gotta knock out all these birds at one stone, man.
71307. Start your text with keyword fan if you want to get into the show. Texter says Clowney and DJ Wanham both on the Panthers now. Also, neither one of those guys were drafted by the Carolina Panthers. So we're talking about draft picks. But yeah, there are now multiple Gamecocks on the roster. Texter says, Big Facts Diesel, come on down, Carlos. They want to see you, my friend.
Yeah, I want to see them too. It's weird to do a show for an audience that I don't know who they are. It would be nice.
The fun part about this is what I've learned a lot over my time being here in South Carolina. Clemson and South Carolina fans are exactly the same. They are flip sides of the same coin. The same things piss each other off. They use the same tired old jokes on each other because they know it gets under each other's skin, but then they both fire back with the same, that doesn't bug me anymore, get new jokes, you yokels kind of things at each other. They are identical human beings because they all live together. There's next door neighbors. Carlos, I saw somebody fly a Clemson flag in their front lawn, and then a house went up for sale. Somebody moves in the next door, they put up a bigger South Carolina flag because they want you to know. They want you to know that they got a Gamecock, an annoying Gamecock living next door to you.
I like that kind of stuff though, and I feel like in the city it's kind of died down with the Giants and Jets rivalry. Like the Giants have always looked at the Jets like the little brother. And then when Aaron Rodgers came into town last year, you saw Jets fans pumping up their chest. And then 4 plays into the season, they went back into hiding, man. It's been rough kind of for the Jets. I'd like to get some of that juice back here. We need a Palmetto Bowl of our own. I don't know what we'd call it, because we already have
the Subway Series. Yeah,
that's for the Yankees and the Mets, though. We got to figure out a cool name for the Giants and Jets rivalry here.
We're going to come back and put a bow on show number 87, Wire to Wire. Thanks all you Tolos who have been with us since the very beginning. I'm talking about you, JD, and Madcraft, and JB, and all you guys who have stuck around. We're going to come back, finish this thing off next on the Fan Upstate. Man, leave it up to college football to drop something huge on us at the very tail end of a Friday show. This is not
Friday
fair.
news dump.
We would have had the opportunity to talk about this for a majority of the show. So here it is. Mandatory student athlete NIL payment reporting is coming to college football. All Division I student athletes will be required to report A, the member institution in which they are enrolled, and or B, the designated reporting entity, any and all third-party NIL contracts or payments with the total value of $600 or more on a schedule to be determined by the defendants. If a student athlete enters into multiple NIL agreements or receives multiple NIL payments from the same or substantially the same third parties, including, by way of example, any affiliates or parties with common ownership, such activities must be disclosed if the aggregate value is at or above $600. So here we go. We're now going to know exactly who is paying these student athletes. Get ready, Carlos. We're going to start seeing patches showing up on these student athletes' jerseys. They're going to look like the driver's side of a stock car with all the advertising messages written all over it. It's coming.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned NASCAR. That's the one I was going to use also. You're going to see the big Wonder Bread logo across the chest. You're going to see Coke on the back. But here's one thing that I'm seeing here as well. Back damages of roughly $2.78 billion will be paid across for 10 years as there are formal settlement documents that were filed in the House today, or in the House versus the NCAA case in federal court today. Jeez. This is going to be, I don't know how to feel about this. I don't want to say it's going to be an absolute disaster, but parts of this is going to be a disaster. This is going to be essentially soccer, where you're going to see advertisements everywhere.
Yeah, what I do fear this is going to do, Carlos, is there's going to be a resurgence of under-the-table payments. And I can't necessarily off the top of my head come up with a scenario with why a student athlete would not want to report the money and where it's coming from. Because I can't think of like who is paying these guys under the table, right? Is it the local strip club that's paying a kid money? Is it the local drug dealer is not throwing money at NIL players? So I can't necessarily think why a student athlete would not want to disclose where the money is coming from unless it's coming from an advertiser that is in competition with someone else who's already giving him an NIL deal. Like if Burger King is giving you an NIL deal and McDonald's comes along, well, you now have to report that, and Burger King could say, whoa. We can't have you taking money for McDonald's and Burger King. That's the only scenario that jumps off the top of my head as to why this would cause a student athlete to not want to disclose where he's getting his money from. But now we're going to know. We're going to know who is buying and paying for these student athletes.
Yeah, and it looks like there's going to be a 22% revenue cap. So we're going to start to see it. This is essentially going to be the beginning of professional college sports. We're going to see exactly who's getting paid what, and you're going to see teams try to like pony up for that 5-star recruit.
I'm all for it. I love it. You know what? Just take this thing to the logical, professional feeling conclusion instead of this backdoor, we don't know who's getting what scenario. Thank you, Carlos with a K, for your time over the last 2 days here on the Fan Upstate. We appreciate you. Tolos back Monday on the Fan Upstate.